not having a very good day, so he's like, you're leaving? And I was like,
well,
sorry.
I fed him when I've known you're not going to be there and he's going to be by himself with the girls. The last couple times I've been there, I try and feed her late. So,
Yeah.
and the girls they shared it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we had a little struggle trying to figure out where it was, because he's got the.
Is it in the tackle box?
No, I took it to,
Okay.
And I
I was
asked him, so
taking,
you're comfortable, and he said,
one
yeah,
of us
he'd
takes
be
it
up on YouTube, so we can get our
to
YouTube.
admin because
Okay,
she has
all right.
to have
Is that
it as
acceptable?
her backup if the
Fine.
video doesn't work. Hello, Sarah. How are you,
701.
girls?
Good. They're mobile.
As soon as he gives me the sign.
Oh,
I think
good.
Leslie can do
I'm sure that
verbatim,
makes you happy.
shorthand.
Happy I'm scared.
Keeps you busy.
Yeah, much busier.
Are you
Longhand.
still watching?
Spencerian.
So it's keeping you
She's gonna
busy
do it in
too.
Sanskrit.
Well, it's, we have,
Ouch.
they have a real nice fence
we
in
ready?
the living room, so it's really neat.
Okay, it's 7:01 or 7:02.
Oh, one.
01, September 13. Board of Directors meeting called to order. Roll call.
Is Andrew expected to be here or not?
Andrew will be here late,
Okay.
as he's informed us because of some training. Rich is not going to be here due to a procedure tomorrow, or tonight,
Okay.
excuse me. Okay, looks like everybody else is here. And we have goodly number of the Finance Committee here. Thank you all. Thank you all. All right, agenda, changes or corrections. So Leslie and Eric, I believe.
No, I was pointing at Leslie.
Oh, okay, Leslie.
We need to have a discussion about the GM search, and I would like to add that in somewhere.
That should be
I
as,
do have proposals here from several people.
okay.
Where would you like to do that?
I believe the last item of new business,
Okay.
G.
G.
And GM search, right? What are we going to title it, Leslie?
GM search.
GM search.
That's what I thought.
Okay, anything else?
I'd like to have just a brief note during continuing business on what we can accomplish at the dog park this year.
H?
Continuing business.
I think so. Continuing business, item C.
C. Dog park.
Yep, dog park. Anything else? Okay, unless there is any objection, I'll hold that this amended agenda is adopted by acclamation. Announcements. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to introduce the members of the Finance Committee that are here
Please
this
do.
evening, if I might. Rick Gray and Tony Lizeo, who have worked very diligently on SURF for the past 4 years, and we appreciate all their efforts. Penny Carter, who has been on the Finance Committee in the past and has returned to help us out again. Thank you very much. And Paula Birchler, who has joined us this year and has been very instrumental in getting a lot of wonderful things accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any other announcements?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
On September 29th, the Emergency Preparedness Committee is having a tabletop exercise at the Southwest Fire Department building. And it will start at 10 o'clock and go to 1. And it is a test on our preparedness in the event of a natural emergency.
That's on the 20 what?
9th.
9th, thank you. That's going to be at the
Fire
fire station.
department.
At the fire station. Yes, sir.
The candidate forum for folks running for the board is going to be held next Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, right downstairs here in this building from 7 to 9. And that forum is being set up by a group from the Communication Committee, but the Communication Committee doesn't, as broadly, doesn't know anything about it other than it's happening. So that's what I'm letting people know.
That's on the 18th, at what time again?
7 o'clock in the evening, right downstairs in the multipurpose room.
Anything else? Okey doke. Then let us move to property owner comments and board comments.
I'm Cheryl Taylor, 6 Caddy Lane. First of all, I would like to really compliment the Finance Committee. Somehow you managed to trim $1.3 million off the budget from last year, so I compliment you on that. My question is to the Finance Committee and to the board. Assuming some act of God or whatever might cause it that your proposed budget does not pass, it says in the measure, if this measure does not pass, then the annual budget will revert to the last membership ratified budget at the 2017 AGM, plus that approved by the April 2018 SGM. Does that mean that dues will revert to the dues that were published in the ballot measure of 9478?
That is pursuant to the wording of both the statute and the consolidated ballot measure as it was published last year.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can you, I don't understand your answer. Is it a yes or no?
It will revert to what the consolidated budget was last year, which included funding for parks, recreation, and roads.
So the $94 that she referred to? Or that included?
The 94, I'm not,
She didn't mention a
what you
dollar.
mean.
I'm not sure what that is. It was a 5.4 million budget. It was the budget, the consolidated budget last year had in it included funding for parks and roads.
Yeah.
However, the funding for that was to be paid for out of a special assessment. That special assessment was not part of the budget. The budget itself included expenditures for those purposes. So that budget, which of 5.4 approximately, would be the budget that would be adopted were this proposed budget not to pass.
So if the dues would remain the same?
No, they would go up.
Could you use your microphone, please?
Sorry, okay. So the way it's laid out, we had the current dues, and then we had two sections on the proposed special assessment that did not pass. 7604 was the regular operating budget and surf and roads without those additions. And then there was $14 for the special assessment and then $474 for parks and trails, totaling to 94. But the special assessment portion was not approved.
That
So
was merely a funding mechanism. The budget was purely regarding expenses. The budget included parks, rec, and roads. So the budget as proposed was passed. What was not passed was a particular specific funding mechanism. That is not covered under the new law. The new law says the budget that was passed is what is adopted. So that budget is adopted. That's the way I read it. We are certainly able to get another reading from our council, but that's the way I read it.
So I guess I would request that because it seems like we're then basically allowing something that didn't pass by membership to be included in the budget without the membership voting approval on it, which happened so it was a different process when this happened, that law wasn't in place, so it was separate. So it seems like we're retroactively implementing how this law reads.
We're not doing anything now. This is all hypothetical.
Right.
And therefore, let us talk with council and get an opinion.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I would request that we not spend money on council unless the situation arises where we need to have that answer. As of right now, it's a hypothetical, as he's saying. We don't know if it'll pass or not. If the budget does fail, then that issue comes into question and we need to talk to our attorney. Or is there some reason we need to have that right now?
Jennifer.
Our attorney reviewed the wording in Measure 1, and he approved what was written there, just as information.
Yes, that is correct. I think the confusion comes in because you don't understand how a budget that didn't include funding could now include funding. And that's an interesting question, and maybe our council will have an interesting answer for us. But I think the real issue is that's a purely hypothetical question at this time. And when and if it becomes necessary, we will discuss with council. For instance, if the AGM this year does not approve a budget, then we'll need to know what we're operating under, and that we can talk with council.
So I guess my only comment back to that would be if this potentially would influence someone's vote on how they voted this year because of that decision, that would be the reason to do it before.
That's an interesting idea. However, it is extremely hypothetical, since in order for a proposed budget to fail, it requires approximately 1,600 votes against. That's extremely unlikely, given the history of Sudden Valley.
Right, I agree, but I think it's still something that the membership, to fully understand what they're saying, should know, in my opinion.
Well, then let somebody make a motion.
We have a motion from
Microphone, please.
property owner comments, is that?
We haven't gotten into,
Yeah, we actually haven't started.
I understand.
Okay.
This is a sort of board response.
Okay.
We can hold off and have it later, or we can just take care of it now while we're
Right.
talking about it.
We can do business anytime.
Yeah. So I'd like to see a motion.
I make a motion to have council review the
Question is
potential
discussed.
outcome if the if the budget were to be rejected.
Okay.
Is that seconded?
I'll second it.
All right, now we'll have a debate. Questions? Comments? I think it's completely unnecessary myself. Linda?
I think the only reason that it's probably pertinent is if you look at the dues for last year for that budget, they're less than the dues that are being proposed for 2019.
We know.
I know,
That's
and
the point of the conversation.
That's why but that's why when Sarah said people have a right to know that, it's important, and it's also part of the information that we provide in the voting booklet, that's all.
Are you suggesting that that would be included in our ballot measure?
No, just the language is in there that if this budget fails, we revert to the last approved budget, correct? But that's language is in there.
That's the statutory language.
Yes, that's correct. And I'm just saying, if that's in there, people have a right to understand that. Do you need to explain it? I don't know if you would, but it's certainly a relevant point that even with a larger budget, the dues were less.
Any other discussion?
Mr. President Carroll.
My feeling is I'd rather have more information than less, and I know we don't like to spend extra money on that kind of hypothetical, but I still think there's no harm in getting the information and letting people know.
Mr. President Eric. Oh, I apologize.
I'm next.
David, I'm sorry.
Yeah, to be maybe it's redundant. I'm with Carol. I think it's more than nice to know. I think it's essential that if it does, that we'll know what that number is, and I think the community does have a right to know that before the vote.
I think that the statutes are pretty plainly worded, and even if our council responded to us by saying that no, that would likely or might not possibly apply, there is still a huge possibility of lawsuit by a group of members that would, if our budget failed this year, respond by suing us and saying, well, then last year's budget, because that's what the statute says plainly. And so again, another hypothetical, but simply as logically hypothetical as the one that you posed.
Any further comment?
Yep.
Yes.
If this is information that members are going to need in order to make an informed vote, I think we need to go ahead and do it and get the opinion. This is a one-off year. This is not going to happen after this year.
Right.
So let's get it right.
Thank you.
Call the question.
Question has been called. Is there any objection? Okay, all in favor, please indicate.
Okay.
Did you have an objection?
No. The motion is all in favor of having the information, taking
All in
it to
favor of
council.
asking the attorney?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Will do.
I will send the question over first thing in the morning.
Okay, any further homeowner comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sharon Wash-Amen. I live at 25 Windward Drive. As usual, I want to thank every person sitting around here for all of your hard work and volunteer service to this community, including the Financial Committee, who I know works very hard. I didn't volunteer to join it because I don't know much about finances, although I know more than my husband. But that's beside the point. What I really wanted to say was that I have been on the Communications Committee, streaming your meetings. I have been on I volunteered to put my name in to nominations and elections because Linda Bradley told me to last time, which she could have put me on the committee. And then I went to the Emergency Preparedness Committee for the first time, and I just want to tell you there was you may not know this, but you probably do. There was an entire room full of knowledgeable people whose whole purpose is to make sure that if something terrible happens in Sudden Valley, that we're going to be protected because we are very likely going to be, we're isolated. It could happen that there's some terrible disaster and help can't get to us. And I had no idea about this committee, except, thank you, Mike, and Carol, but I didn't know it even existed. And now there's a whole nother reason to be so grateful for all the people who dedicate themselves to the good of this community. And so now I learned something else, being as I'm going to be 70 in about a month, and I'm pretty much going to want young people to take over, but you never ever stop learning things, and I never even knew about what the EPC did. Now I do. Now I want to get trained and be ready to help when something horrible happens. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any other homeowner comments?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Walsh, and I'm new to Sudden Valley. And I'm here tonight because I want...
Where do you live, please?
51 Marigold.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Very much want to thank a couple of the employees here at Sudden Valley that were so helpful to me in completing my move. I had this huge moving van come in, and I couldn't stage it outside gate 2 anywhere. Couldn't do it at the market, couldn't do it anywhere else. So I apologize, I believe his name is Mr. Bishop.
Bruce.
And Bruce Bishop and Mike Abbott, the security officer, were very helpful, Mr. President, and Mr. General Manager. I just wanted to say that it was a very pleasant experience to have those two gentlemen assist. And I know there are other great employees as well, but those were the two that I interfaced with. And I'm thrilled to be here, so I just wanted to publicly thank them here at this meeting, and I'll write a letter also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Welcome to the
Scott,
community. And
you just moved here from Pleasanton, California?
I had to bring up California.
So
yes.
That gentleman over there in the aquamarine sweater is the head of emergency management, and Scott is a former fire chief.
Oh, great.
Captain. Never wanted to be a chief.
Excuse me, fire captain, and I think he would be a great person for your committee.
Thank you.
somebody with knowledge, we love it. And thank you very much for taking the time specifically to come here, and thanks staff, it's very much appreciated. Yeah. Any other homeowner comments?
Hi, my name is Mary McIntosh, 3 West New Swan Place. I have a few questions from last week when I asked questions. I had time to go back and do my own research, and some of the numbers don't exactly add up to what I was told. So first of all, let's start with the salary that you guys have allotted to pay the GM. As a nonprofit, your salaries are supposed to be in line with other general manager homeowner associations. With several Google searches, I could not find a salary anywhere for more than $120,000. That was in California. I did find a lot of information about what would happen if the IRS decides that the salaries being paid are out of line, and what would happen to the nonprofit status and the fines that we, as a homeowner association, would be charged if we were found to be significantly outside of standard salaries by the IRS regarding the nonprofit status that we have.
Is that a question?
It is. I would like to have a response to that, to the what you have allotted for 2019.
Okay, that number was based on an estimate of what we might be required to pay. But what we will actually pay totally depends upon the state of the market when we have our professional search managers, which we haven't even chosen yet. You'll hear more about that later this evening. What they tell us we need to pay is, of course, going to be the market rate. We won't pay more than market rate. And should we have covered all our fiscal responsibility points by getting a professional to give us professional advice, then I am absolutely, wholeheartedly in favor, if the IRS should decide to do that, questioning us as to why the salary is as it is. Completely neutral, third-party, independent recommendation.
Excellent, because actually another issue that I noticed was that the experience needed to be had in order to pay the salaries that I was seeing, and which I know for a fact that Mitch did not have. Also, actually, I just totally lost my next train of thought on that one, but I also had some really significant questions about the golf course losses. The $88,000 loss that's being said that's what's going to happen for next year, there seem to be a lot of fees or a lot of costs that were left off of that estimation. And I guess I'm really confused as to how that happened.
Well, that is a bit detailed to respond now, but
Okay.
I believe that someone from the Finance Committee or staff would be willing to walk you through
Well, let's do it right
the
here,
budget.
just really
No, ma'am,
quickly.
we will
How
not do it
about
right
for
now. No, ma'am,
2000
we will not do it right now.
Well,
You can
Larry,
talk about this.
The thing is that there
offline.
are a significant couple $100,000 of direct golf course costs that are not included. And I believe that what you are presenting to the residents in Sudden Valley is false.
Thank you, ma'am. If you can prove that, you are more than welcome to bring us that information. So
I can't prove that. Would you like
I
me to
would
go through the
suggest,
numbers?
I would suggest that you make a list and send it to me directly, and I will make sure
And would
answers
you
are
respond the
provided.
way that you've responded to my complaint about the harassment that I received? Larry, you have been anything but helpful and accommodating in any regard. And I do think, actually, I would like the accountant to respond, because the numbers are numbers. You can't.
I am certainly not the person who is going to be providing you any information. Just send me your questions, your list of concerns, and I will make sure that the accountant gets that and that you get the information that you're requiring. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you're not going to respond to?
No, ma'am, this is not a
the fact?
debate session, nor is it a Q&A for anyone in the community to come up and hijack a board meeting where we have to actually look at the numbers and make a decision and vote on a proposed budget. We do not have the time to do what you're proposing to do, so we will not do that.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for your help.
Are there any further homeowner comments? Okay. So let us go to continuing business and voting is necessary. We are starting with, now, no one suggested that we move this, so we're starting directly in on the budget discussion, pretty much where we left off last week. Yes, ma'am. And sir.
I'm wondering if we could do as we did last week and bring the Finance Committee into the discussion on this for the moment of the actual discussion.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
All right, that's a motion to go into essentially a relaxed committee structure where everybody can speak as if they were a member of this particular body.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any objection?
Just a comment that we didn't have board comments. I'm assuming nobody had a board comment, right? I'm just looking at the agenda.
We got board comments.
Okay, that was sufficient with regards to, okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any objection? Given that there's no objection, why don't I hold that this motion is accepted by acclamation? And so now we're basically in, loosely speaking, a committee of the whole. Just loosely speaking. And you're the treasurer, so I guess that puts you in the hot seat.
Based on some discussion we had last week, and I'm going to ask Jennifer and Mitch to kind of quickly review for a few of the people who weren't here last time, what our status is on anticipated additional expenses for the Area Z project. as it's the basis for some revisions that staff has made to our dues proposal.
I'm going to ask you again to clarify. There was a lot of information that was presented last week. So where would you specifically like us to start?
Well, I think the point that was raised last week was the idea of increasing the dues by $1.82. Can you just give us a reasoning for that so that there would be some understanding as to why?
Certainly can, ma'am. We went ahead and deferred the Area Z project. As the board knows, they approved going forward with moving the structure into Area Z from Barn 6, which increased our cost minimum for just putting in the fire hydrant by about $200,000. We received a tremendous amount of regulatory requirements associated with the spit so far, the fire pipe, and not so much the pool, but mostly with Area Z. So as a result of that, we are encountering costs that were not anticipated because during the environmental review process, all regulators can insert costs into the project because they can. That is their opportunity, and they can force, in the case of the water district, requirements for infrastructure. We encountered last week that the water pipes for the water district, normally at 4.5 feet, are 11.5 feet deep. We are not sure from their as-built where exactly they are, what type of pipe they are, and how we are going to attach them. So this year, while we still have dirt season, we are potholing out there right now to ensure we know where the pipe is and what type of pipe it is and how we're going to connect to it. But because it's also so deep, that in itself is a minimum $25,000 to do a shoring plan for OSHA requirements to work that deep in the ground. The cost to do the job has gone up because of the requirements that we are now facing. As a result of this, we are suggesting to defer the project, not try to squeeze it into the dirt season between now and September 30th, start the project again on June 1 when the dirt season continues. We have spoken to the bank. The bank would prefer to not extend our contract, and they would prefer to stay with the same interest rate, but they are willing to increase the loan amount. So with that in mind, not changing the interest rate and increasing it to a September completion, they're willing to increase the contingency and the anticipated overruns and additional costs, which we feel would be best capped at $500,000. So that would come to $1.82 per homeowner per month. And if we don't use the cash, you get to put it back in the loan. That we think is the wisest move as opposed to using the cash on hand that we have. And we have more than enough cash reserves on hand, but we feel that that would not be prudent to consume all of our cash reserves, which are established for the purposes of handling emergent issues. This is a project, these are changes, these are additional costs, put it to the cost of the loan. That's our recommendation.
Thank you. And let me ask a question. So you said that you talked to the bank and they said that we would anticipate a completion in September of next year?
Actually, our contract project manager feels that if we started on June 1, we already have our permit. Now, here's a nice value. If we signed our permit, we purchased it, once the permit's in hand, even if regulatory law changes, we will not be held to a new change or new scope. So with the scope that we now have, starting on June 1, we feel comfortable with the June and July completion. Let's just say that it goes to September. The bank is hesitant to want to keep extending the duration. They're more comfortable saying, or when reviewing, why we think capping it at $500,000 additional funds is a wise move and prudent, and they would be more comfortable with adding that into the total loan amount. Instead of 1125, it would be 1625. And then they would give us the cash at the end of the loan, and now we can take the time that we need to finish the job without a bank-imposed deadline.
Okay. And what is the end of the draws period then?
Currently, it's middle of May.
So the end of the draw period wouldn't change. Instead, at the end of the draw period, they would advance us the rest of the loan, and we would have those funds available to pay for the project through September. And once the project is finished at the end of September, any funds that we have not spent from the loan would be immediately paid back to the principal portion of the loan. We are allowed without penalty to pay down the principal at any time.
What other questions?
I have one. Mitch or Jennifer, we're talking about these proposals, correct? The 182, I noticed that on page 3, it stipulates that the 182 is included. Is that also true in option 1?
So in option 1, we did not add an additional 182 because option 1 is a fully funded option. We won't be negative in any 1 year. Therefore, I think that we're able to cover the additional $1.82 increase in option 1 without adding it in. But in option 2, we are negative in several years over the 9-year projected from 2019 to 2027. So I think that it's prudent to add it in option 2.
Now, if it's a line item here on option 2, where would I see it? Where would I find it?
It was added into SURF. So on the last projection you saw, SURF was 25 something. And in this projection, it's 2779, so it was added into the SURF line.
Okay.
For both undeveloped and developed.
All right, thanks, Jennifer.
Sarah?
Okay, question. So when we initially did this loan before, we were able to do it without going to the vote of the members because we were able to fund it ourselves without needing more dues. So my question is, are we able to add this $500,000 without going to the members for a vote since we don't have the money to pay it with existing dues?
The answer is under the new law, yes, ma'am, we can.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Eric.
Under the plan presented last week and the plan right now with the additional $1.82 for SURF, I believe that there's still going to be a rolling need to extend SURF projects. And since, the Finance Committee is here, I guess that the SURF team would know most about this. But whether we have that $1.82 a month or not, we're still going to need to be prolonging the approach to some of the items on the SURF list. Is that right? Right. And so really this $1.82 is just another step in the direction of rolling back that process of, well, this year we've had to put off a whole lot of stuff. Next year, under the budget that was presented last week, we would have to put off fewer things. And with this $1.82 additional presented this week, we might have to put off one fewer thing, which is the Area Z. Either way, we still have to continue putting things off until we become fully funded, which is over the 10-year projection where we want to get. But this next year, no matter what, we're going to be putting stuff off. Either way, right? And so I am in favor of absorbing this $1.82 in the last week's plan.
Okay.
Just a correction, this wouldn't fully fund. If we fully funded, it would be several $100s a month.
Oh, I certainly
This is
agree.
baseline
I said
funding.
over the 10 years.
Yeah, that achieves baseline funding.
Right.
Fully funding this would be multiple hundreds of dollars a month right now.
Oh, I absolutely understand.
Yeah, that's the...
Different subject.
Right.
Mr. President, Linda.
I guess I I have a question about this whole SURF thing. The $1.125 million loan did not cover the full cost of all the projects. And now we're looking at asking for another $500K. I know we saw the PowerPoint that was up there. It'd really be nice to have something to actually look at, because that wasn't too easy to see. We had something in our packets, but that had been superseded by what we saw on the board up there when you did the PowerPoint. I guess my point is, we're asking for the $500,000 more. How does that fit into the fact that it was acknowledged that we were still going to have to cover some of our costs from SURF for the existing projects, even when we took the loan out?
Well, Linda, we're actually looking up the dollar amount right now. I believe it was,
Linda, could you restate your question, please?
When we took out when the total of the projects that are included in that loan are greater than the $1.125 million loan we took out. And I'm saying, now we're saying we want to ask for another $500,000. And I'm saying, we've seen from the PowerPoint we saw, there's overruns, we're anticipating extra money. And I'm saying, are we still going to be using money out of our SURF to fund the difference in those projects still, plus still have this additional $500,000 now we're saying we're going to be indebted to?
So the loan amount is the 1.125 million. The amount that we are spending out of our own reserves is $683,000, just under $700,000. And then additionally, we would like to increase the loan amount by $500,000. We don't think that we're going to spend the entire $500,000, but I don't want to go talk to the bank again.
Oh, I understand
And
that.
so that would be in addition to the loan and the amount we've spent out of our reserves. However, I don't think that we should spend the additional $500,000 out of our reserves. We have $500,000 in our reserves that we could spend, but I think that given the aging infrastructure of the association and how many issues come up on a daily basis, such as the breaking of the entire HVAC system, that it would be more prudent to take out the loan at this lower interest rate over a 10-year period and to save our reserves in case of emergency. That way, if there is something that comes up, a road that fails, a bridge that fails, that we are able to have the funds in our reserves to pay for that, to get it fixed.
Just a follow-up question to help clarify your answer. You mentioned that without the loan and based on the funding that we already had, we would be contributing about $600,000, a little under $700,000, right?
We are now currently contributing $683,000.
Okay. With the loan, would that change at all?
If we increase the loan, that does not change.
And that is because the size of the project has increased?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Does that help?
It does. I just wanted clarification on that, that's all.
Mr. President, Carol.
Just, I think if I'm correct on this, that was part of the bank stipulation would be that we would spend our own monies before we began to draw on the bank loan. And so that was our agreement with them, that we would spend that 683 prior to actually using the bank's money.
That's correct. We're actually only making our first loan draw this month.
Further questions? No other questions?
Comments?
I have one, actually, although, let me ask it, but you might actually be helping provide a response. I don't know.
Could you please use the microphone that's sitting next to you so we can all hear you? Thank you.
Okay, so the question that I have for clarification is on page 23 of the packet tonight. It's a small amount. It's not a huge deal breaker here at all, but I just didn't understand. For 2019 in the mailbox reserve fund, you have dues income of $23,000. I was wondering what that was coming, what source that was coming from.
So the current dues, the budget measure is prepared assuming that the board adopts dues proposal option 2 on page 3. So just so everybody knows, that's what the budget measure is presented on. And so that would be 67 cents a month to the mailbox fund that we currently have. So that would be considered board designated mailbox. Currently the mailbox fund that we have with the $2,700 in it is member mailbox because it was as a special assessment previously.
So I still don't understand your answer. I don't understand what the 67 cents is.
We're funding cash from capital back into the mailbox fund because we're going to need to expand the mailboxes again for parcel boxes.
Well, and they're gonna need to be replaced in the year 2040 per the reserve study.
So we're building the reserve fund back up.
Do you understand, Penny, that if you look at option 2, it requests, or it suggests a 67 cent a month dues payment from everyone over the course of 2019. So you multiply that times 12 times the number of homeowners, that will bring us to the $23,000. Does that make sense?
I understand the math.
Okay, but that wasn't what you were asking.
No, that is what I was asking, but I just historically, that mailbox reserve fund was supposed to go away. So that's why I'm questioning as to why we still have it and why it's just not part of SERF, because it is, the mailboxes are just an asset of the corporation, just like a truck or a part of the building or whatever. So, and I understand that we kept it open just to be able to collect from folks who owed us money from the time period of the special assessment. That was the sole purpose, as I understood it historically, as to why we kept that open, not to continue to keep it open ad infinitum in order to fund future projects. That it was supposed to become part of SERF. So that's my question, that we've got a small amount of something earmarked that doesn't seem to make sense to me in the grand scheme of things.
I now totally understand your question, Penny. I would recommend actually to the Finance Committee in the next fiscal year to eliminate the mailbox fund and roll it into SERF, because it's just another item that you have to track. And I would probably recommend that they also eliminate the board density reduction fund and roll it into SERF, because it's used for capital equipment. They're open, it's a board action. I would recommend the Finance Committee discuss that and propose the elimination of those two accounts. We would find the bookkeeping easier and would appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry, thanks for clearing that up. That it really is pretty much consistent with what I thought. The board has not yet acted to eliminate those funds, so they're still active. The question I have for the Finance Committee members is, what would be the impact of the suggestion by Director Trower to eat essentially the $1.82 to cover a loan of an increased size? Would that significantly damage our ability to handle SERF next year were we to do that?
Does this work?
Yeah.
I'm hearing it.
I guess I'd like to back up 12 months. So 12 months ago, we had some serious issues with SERF, which included the fire line to the marina, which included the ice barn, and not enough funds in SERF to anticipate what might cause serious issues to the community. So what we made a recommendation to the board was that we take out a loan and dedicate some funds for a period of time to pay back that loan out of SURF. Because we couldn't pay for those. So SURF has been paid for in the past without loans and just paying on a one-time each year funding process. So in essence, what we did last year was commit that so much dollars of SURF funds would be allocated so that we could fix some critical areas of our assets at that time. Granted, we estimated what that would take to get done and went forward and got a loan while interest rates were lower, as they're now going up, as everyone realizes. So, I mean, that's your best guess. So bottom line is we identified those as critical assets that we needed to maintain. If we had known at that time that we needed an extra $1.82 and an extra $500,000 potentially at that time, I think the recommendation would be to go to $1.625 million because we cannot afford to lose those assets. We did change from putting, replacing the ice barn with the new structure to move it to Area Z once we were able to get the decontamination mitigation squared away in Area Z, because it didn't make sense to spend money, tear down the ice barn, put that over in where the ice barn is, and then later move it to Area Z. We could save money by holding off a year and buying a year and keeping the ice barn through last year and then doing that this year. But obviously it makes sense now with what we've discovered with the shoring requirements for the fire line to continue that on. So the bottom line is, I think if this had come knowledgeable earlier, the Finance Committee again would make that recommendation that we dedicate $1.82 a month
Extra
funding to cover this.
Extra.
Does that answer your question?
Actually, no. It does support that there is, in your opinion, a need for this additional source of funding. What I was concerned with, though, is the difference between, we'll just call it $125 a month versus $127 a month. If we say, no, the community is only willing to handle $125 a month, is that loss of $2, which is actually $1.82, is that in itself, in and of itself, going to cause harm or added delay, and how bad is that going to be? I mean, my suspicion is that you will say, yes, it will cause added delay. The real question is, how bad would that be?
Well, all I can do is ask you to look at history, because we've been putting Band-Aids on everything for so long. Now we don't have Band-Aids we can put on things anymore. We have to do replacements of things. There's no more Band-Aids. So I can't tell you exactly without going back and doing a whole nother reserve analysis as to what things we're gonna have to put off and what is the potential catastrophe that might happen if we put that off and don't put a Band-Aid on it this year. You know, it's just, we've been doing this for too long. So I can't tell you whether the $1.82 today, what impact it is really gonna have. All I know is that SURF has been so underfunded for the 4 years I've been on this committee that, well, we talked about 3 and 4 years ago, it's come to fruition with us having to tear things down and replace things rather than being able to put Band-Aids on them anymore. I can't, so I really can't answer that.
Well, I think you answered it quite well, which is, given the fact that it's an estimate of an estimate, it would be difficult to come up with an exact impact, but you're suggesting there would be some impact. We just don't know what it would be right now. Please, you got a further answer to that? And also Eric has another question. So if that question has been answered by you guys, we'll go to Eric.
The thing that I'd like to add, though, is remember, there's still a significant amount of items in 2019 that won't even get done, that even potentially needed to get done in 2018. So there's always, just as we've done for years when we didn't have any money, practically, there's always between staff, or mostly between staff and outside engineers, helping us to decide what the order of priorities are. We just don't have enough money, even at this option 2 proposal and collection. We just don't have enough money to do the things that we really need to do. And that is, you know, from a roads standpoint, culverts, bridges, it covers those things as well as other assets of the corporation. So it's $1.82 a month. It's like, I kind of, where Rick is like, I don't know how to answer that question other than the fact that we are always playing Russian roulette here relative to what is it that is going to cause us to have an utter catastrophe that we don't have any, even at these levels, have enough money. The other thing that I'd like to put in perspective here is that many of the board members have been here long enough, and many of the finance committee members may or may not have been here long enough. Back in, I believe it was 2005 or 2006, we were talking about what was needed at that point in time was about $100 a month. I think it was 2006, I'm not positive of the year, it might have been 2007. Had we had that $100 a month, we might have mitigated some of this issue and been able to make different decisions along the line. And if you just inflate that $100 a month by 3% per year, you're up in the $130 to $145 a month range. So just in perspective is that this is not a new issue. This isn't, you know, we can nickel dime a $20,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 salary of a GM. We can nickel dime other things, but in the grand scheme of things, in the size of the budget that we have, in the not only the size of the budget, but the size of the liability that we have, and it's listed here, I forget what the page is in here around what our deficit is per person, per lot, per month, if we were fully funded, as I read that, it's substantial. So regardless, I hate the number that we are talking about from an increase. I understand the significance of that for many people, but we are so far behind the 8 ball that that the boards for not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 5 years, but for decades have been trying to correct a problem. And I'm just grateful that we're on a path to move us in a direction of being able to do something where we can all be proud of what we own, because we all own part of this. So that's more than you were asking about, but it just puts it in perspective from a longer term perspective. And we've got a long ways to go yet. This increase that we're talking about for 2019 is not the end of the increases. It can't be the end of the increases, and face reality of the situation that we have in the association.
Staff input to answer your question, Penny. In 2019, based on our 2018 reserve study, 32318 this year. In 2019, current deficit per member per month for fully funded reserves, they'd have to increase it per person $240.72.
You know, it's just a substantial deficit. And so it's just unfortunate that we are in this situation, and grateful, and we are now, you know, at least some of us, I think a lot of people in the association are grateful that we can move forward in a more positive direction instead of continuing down the sinkhole that we were headed down.
Any other response
Mr.
to that
President.
question? Otherwise, we'll go to Eric.
Well, we have Linda and Sarah prior to Eric.
Oh, prior to Eric. I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Go ahead, Linda.
I was going to say, we keep talking about getting rid of the mailbox fund, and yet we've started out this whole budget discussion with the budget has 4 components: surf, roads, mailbox, and operations. And yet you've got it in all your voting materials, and yet you're saying, hey, before the end of 2019, we'd like to get rid of this reserve. And if it's considered a capital reserve, I don't know that you can take people to contribute that amount of money and then just make the mailbox reserve go away.
It doesn't go away. It just simply gets absorbed into the rest of SURF. It would still be billed out at a separate amount, and it would be tracked. So that really is of very little consequence.
I don't know. I don't know that you can do reserves that way.
Okay.
Mr. President, Sarah.
Sarah.
Following up on what she said, the whole point of doing it is to simplify the accounting and not track it separately. So I guess I don't agree with that comment at all. The idea would be to roll it in. But my question on it would be, if we roll it in, so that money's been specifically set aside for mailboxes, if we get 23,000 for that, if we roll it into SURF, it's no longer going to be used exclusively for mailboxes. Is there not some liability with that, since we've collected the money specifically for that?
I highly doubt it, but please go ahead. I believe our accountant can tell us.
I believe that's a legal question, but my past experience is that we were able to roll MR&R, for which we still collected a significant amount of back dues on, into SURF, and there was no issue with that. But it would, of course, need to go to the attorney. I'm an accountant, a CPA, not an attorney.
Point of information, the reason there wasn't any problem with rolling MR&R into SURF is MR&R was our SURF account beforehand and was used for that purpose, and that's why it was the same account.
Well, I think
we had MR&R before we had SURF.
I understand. Okay. I think the point is, though, that if there are difficulties, we will be informed of those, and then the board will not make that decision. If there are no difficulties, then the board can make a choice whether to roll it in or not.
That was a side, just follow up from what she said. Okay, my question is, on this, if we're basing this on 3,154 lots, what month is that from? My question is, the last detail I've seen is June, and we were saying that there was 3,161 lots. So I'm not sure if this is July or August, and I just haven't seen it, and that's where it's coming from, or?
Correct. It's currently, as of August, we have 3,154 lots.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Mr. President, Eric.
I'm really appreciating the input from the entire Finance Committee tonight. This is incredibly helpful for us, for me anyway. And what Penny mentioned about no matter what level of dues we increase to this year, they're still going to be facing things that we can't do that we should be doing. Absolutely. And as Rick said, even last year, at the SURF level of $10.97 a month, if we had known that this project was going to be 1.6125 versus 1.2125 or whatever it was, a $500,000 difference, that Finance Committee would have recommended taking out that additional loan that would have been funded completely by SURF that was coming in at $10.97 a month, which to me means that if we were going to absorb it at $10.97, we can sure as hell do it at $27.79.
That really wasn't a question, it was more of a
So,
comment.
yeah, it's a comment, and that's my defense of my statement that I think the $1.82 a month shouldn't be included in this year's budget.
Okay, I'll just pose that as a question. Is there any fault in that logic? If we were to have done it last year, would we still have taken it out of our surf collections for this current year?
I didn't answer that question.
When we sit down over the course of the year, try to figure out what we're going to do with surf, we go through a priority, criticality, potential consequences if we don't deal with something. And the items that are covered by that loan, we identified as absolutely critical to maintaining the culture and who we are as a community in Sudden Valley. So, to be honest with you, almost whatever funds it took, we would have approved. And our only option last year was to be creative and come up with something different than what had been done in the past, which says, well, we absolutely cannot do this year and just fund this. We can't spend below our reserve, all of our reserves on this, but we have to figure out a way to maintain these assets. Otherwise, we lose our roads, we lose our marina, we lose other things in this community that takes away who Sudden Valley is. If you put it to that question, I don't think there's much question in what the answer is.
Agreed.
If I may,
Please.
the bank did ask when we were speaking to them if we were going to update the budget correspondingly for an increase in the loan.
And the response that you gave them was?
That's the plan.
So you have done essentially what you said you would do, which is update the proposed budget.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Penny.
Question for Eric. So, in my listening to your question or your statement and Rick's answer, it didn't seem like they were on the same page. So maybe I didn't hear the answers in one answer, or the request or the question the same. What I thought I heard you say is something not supporting the $1.82 being added into this year's dues. And what I thought I heard Rick say was we would have found a way to increase the dues by $1.82 in order to make this happen. That we wouldn't have dipped into the surf more. We would have done what was necessary. So I think, did I get that right, that you guys are on a different page? Or did I not get that right?
Well, that's not the way I heard it, but why don't you clarify?
I think we said the same thing.
I agree with Penny. The way I heard it was that you said scrap the 182.
And that's what I heard.
No, what I said in this proposed new budget this week, as opposed to last week's, it's $1.82 increase to fund that. And what I heard Rick say was that, as I understood last year, if we had to increase the loan amount in SURF last year, based on the currently funded model of $10.97 a month, we would have still done it.
I don't think we could have. We were increasing the loan, but if we were going to take money out of, make the payments out of SURF, we didn't have enough SURF money to go that high. We could have done that last year at 10.97. Am I correct?
I don't know that the bank would have approved that loan. They might have, maybe, but it's unlikely. There would be no other SURF money left, and the bank did not want to see that.
We were, right now we have about $290,000.
Is your microphone on?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, okay. We would have had about $290,000
to fund CERF for 2018. That's all we had this year after the loan. And look at what the things that we had to fund this year.
Oh, I agree.
$118,000 for air conditioning. That blew our budget for CERF. And I think it's appropriate that we do add up $1.82 in there to increase that loan, $500,000.
Thank you. I find that very clarifying.
That was good, thanks.
I have no more.
No other questions. Sarah?
Oh, sorry.
I just have a general comment about the budget dues options presented. I'm sad to see that we only have 2 options, and the least amount that's being given as an option is 47% and 60% increase for people. I know this is a two-sided argument that we're way behind and we have assets that are failing, but we also have a community that many of them live on a very set budget, and they didn't move here thinking that they would be stuck with catching up decades of failing assets now. Now, I know we're obviously not doing it all. Mitch brought up it was like $250 to fully fund CERF, so it's not like we're doing it all. But it's still a significant increase to a lot of people that's going to affect their ability to pay their bills. And I don't feel we've balanced that enough with what we have to do. I still feel that the minimum, the lower dues proposal, if you will, option 2, is still way too much to ask people to do in 1 year. Now, I know there's 2 sides to that. I know we're not fully funding everything. I know stuff needs help, but this didn't happen in 1 year. It didn't happen in 2 years. It didn't happen in 10 years. So the fact that we're bumping it up this much and hurting a lot of people, we don't have a plan in place. Larry talked a little bit about that last board meeting about we can't, subsidize dues because everyone has to pay an equal amount, that we were still kind of working on an idea for that, but we don't have that yet. So people that can't pay it just can't pay it. We've had some issues of people's homes getting weaned in foreclosures and property. That's a real that's a real concern for people. And I think it's just scary that people are going to have to pay 47% more if they're on a developed lot. Well, obviously they're on a developed lot, in their dues than they were in the prior year, especially knowing that this law basically makes it highly unlikely to fail. Just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Just a point of information or request from staff. How many homes or lots have been foreclosed on in the last 2 or 3 years?
In the history of Sudden Valley, to my knowledge, we have never foreclosed on a home.
Never.
But we've taken property and we've done other
We've
things,
taken
and we've done
property in lieu.
liens.
We have taken property in lieu. Do you have
Right.
any idea what that was?
Yes, well, we had a person's car, as we all know, and then they magically walked in 7 days later and paid cash, $10,000. That's the only property, I think, at this point that we have actually done that to. We have taken property, vacant lots back, deed in lieu. We took another one back this week, a deceased couple, and so from their estate, and people have surrendered their lots. The board gave permission to foreclose on 4 lots last year, and of those 4 lots, 2 of them turned out to be deceased, and the other 2, once we initiated an action, they came 100%, very quickly came 100% current.
Okay, Eric.
I absolutely understand the potential needs of community members to make their payments, and any increase in dues could be a stressor factor on some folks. I don't want to pay any extra for anything myself, but Sudden Valley does have programs, and we're continuing to develop try to develop more programs for those in need. And how many members do we have on payment plans right now?
Approximately 30.
Now, that, I think that there are 30 members out of the 3,000 that 3,100 lots that are in need enough to need a payment plan. I think that that speaks volumes as to how affordable it is right now, and that only 30 members are at that level of need. I'm very grateful that we have a program that allows members in need to have payment programs, and worked with the community to do what we all signed up to do here.
Several years ago, we had 54, and we have never gone that high again, and now it's down to that number. And we have not had a problem working with the members to bring them current. And then you couple that with, we're at 96+% of members who pay absolutely on time every month. So there's a 4% interest, or 4% that do not. We have people who have multiple lots that we have tried to engage in conversations, and they're undeveloped and they owe us a lot of money, and we're having a hard time reaching them. We actually have quite a few of these, which make up our 4%. We're actually doing quite well with the membership, and I think the membership is doing quite well working with the association. It's not showing that we have a trend in the direction of hardship. And when we encounter it, one-on-one, we work with those members because we're a community.
The only trend I've seen is that in January, dues go down. I think you got a lot of Christmas bills to pay off.
Yeah, that every year we have that trend.
Are there any other questions regarding the budget? Well,
if we are done with that part of the discussion, I'd like to make a motion to rise up out of our quasi committee of the whole and go back into regular session.
is there a second?
A second.
Okay, David seconded.
Yes, David did.
Is there any need to discuss?
Was there? So we had a motion originally.
We had a motion to come into this.
But we don't have a motion on this.
No, not yet.
Okay.
We can't have any motions.
There's no business. The only business that we can do is to come out of this format.
All right, thank you.
So unless there's a discussion, all in favor of coming out of this format back into the regular board format, please indicate. Okay, so done. We're back. Oh, welcome. Snuck right up on me.
We do have a motion over here.
All right, so we're back in regular session now, and we have a motion, or at least we have somebody calling for attention.
I'd like to make a comment. I want to thank the Finance Committee for providing their insight and their ideas tonight. You are welcome to stay if you wish, but feel free if you, I know how much you love meetings, and so if you would like to depart, you're certainly welcome to. We do appreciate all of your input tonight.
I want to second that. I got to say, the things that I heard, the statements that I heard, and the questions that I heard, and all of that stuff has been very, very helpful to my understanding of where you guys are coming from as you look at the numbers that you have developed and given to us. So I very, very much appreciate the input. Thank you.
If anyone ever thought that there wasn't lively debate in the Finance Committee, I think that we showed tonight that we can do that.
Okay, so we are still on the issue of a budget. Mike had his hand up first.
I'll defer to the treasurer on this one.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the dues proposal option 2.
Second.
And which option 2 would that be, Madam?
The option 2 that was presented to us this evening.
This evening,
With the additional 182.
with including the 182?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Director, seconded already.
Okay. I didn't hear him, but you got eyes in the back of my head.
Don't go there.
Okay. Discussion on that motion. Linda.
I just have one question for staff, for Jennifer in particular. It's really, usually, traditionally, vacant lots do not see the amount of increase that the developed lots do. And I was wondering why they're so much higher than the developed lots this year, that's all.
So the difference between a vacant lot and a developed lot is not in the capital dues, it's in the operational dues. And historically, the percentage that vacant lots pay since 2012, that developed lots pay is 86.12%. And so that is the percentage that we maintained for this year. So after you add in the capital dues, unfortunately, the dues do go up by a slightly higher percentage for undeveloped lots versus vacant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I do believe Leslie's hand came up first.
Oh, okay. I'm looking through here at the different components of the dues. On option 2, the roads have been increased by $15. Now, to me, this is right in line with what the members voted for last year. I mean, it was 14 last year, it's $15 this year. It's this is what the members asked for. I mean, their number one concern is the roads. And I think that we have to agree that this is the one component that we all have to say yes to. When you look back at the SURF, so that's percentage-wise quite a bit more. I don't believe that this does approach what the reserve study has been asking for, but to me this is a start, and we will see when the literature gets sent out the estimates on how much we should be paying, but this increase for SURF is, I'm not as foursquare behind it as for the roads, but I think it's a fair one. OPS has the least amount of increase of all three of these components. And I think that we have to recognize that as time goes on and we have different requirements from the state as far as salaries go and increases in how we insure our properties and so on and so forth, costs are going up. And I think it's a reasonable number. So I support option number 2.
Mr. President, Eric.
My conversation with the Finance Committee and the board this evening about the SURF in particular has brought me to a clearer understanding of what we could have done or could not have done in the past. And I can absolutely see the validity of my personal argument, but that's just me. And because it's just me, I'm going to have to get behind this motion.
Very good. Next.
That's all I have, sir. Call the question.
Question has been called.
I apologize, Andrew popped in there.
Sorry.
Sorry, the delayed hand wave there. My question, I guess, is
microphone, just a bit.
Sure. My question is, you know, you have to ask a lot of questions if you're not on the board or if you're just a community member looking in, and so I agree with the motion as proposed. My concern is, or question is, if staff has a way of creating just a very simple marketing brochure or something that can just, in a really easy to understand way, a simplified version of what is happening here. I don't know, that might be helpful, and I'm happy to support, but that question's out there. If there's anything we can produce that makes it easy for someone who's not looking at this every other week to understand.
If I understand it correctly, the director asked if we were going to put together a brochure or some way for the membership to understand what we're doing. I would be very happy to accept help from N&E or from communications in putting something together to do exactly that.
Yes, Eric.
Andrew and I have spoken briefly about the need for this, and he is ready, willing, and able, as a member of the Communication Committee, to get involved in helping to produce such a product. And I am behind that, and I will help him any way I can, work with him. And it's going to take more than just us, though. So it's, I think it's necessary, and we need to have a polished, refined presentation.
I can't help myself. I'm going to interject. I have been for years saying, please, more pie charts and graphs or whatever so that people can visually see what this stuff is. I know that's how I learn. And looking at these, this is really difficult for me. I cannot imagine that it's easy for a lot of people, particularly others who, like myself, learn visually. So that's just my comment. David had his hand up, and then I'll go to Linda. David?
Yeah, I certainly like that. The concern I have is what we encountered a year or two ago. It's as if we as the board are taking a position, and we are, but the sense was that one of our members had said, well, you're sort of taking sides, if you will, that perhaps some of the community are, you know, if we present it as information and not as a PR thing. I mean, that was one of the complaints, as some of you may recall. It says you really, as a board, shouldn't be taking, you should be presenting the information, but sort of staying out like we are, starting pushing this. That's the only concern I have. I mean, in some ways, yes. But on the other hand, you know, that was a critique that was presented, and we got a lot of you know, feedback on that. You know, we wore the T-shirts, yes for success, this, that, and the other thing. We were all behind whatever the particular position was, but we did get criticized pretty strongly by a lot of members in the community. I'm just putting that out as a caveat.
Thank you. I have a response, but I'm not going to say it.
Mr. President, Linda?
Linda.
I just wanted to say, as far as NNE goes, we put out a voting booklet to the members. That information that goes into that is basically financial information, is provided by staff that are things that have come out of the Finance Committee that are voted on by the board, or is information that is required by law. And that's what we do. I think probably the board's best time would to have town halls. We sometimes don't have them. Talk about a time. We have all of October, hopefully when the ballots go out by the end of this month. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but that would probably be an excellent time to start putting graphs and things together and offering opportunities and written material as well as just PowerPoint presentations.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Odell.
Odell.
My comment is kind of in line with Sarah's point that she makes. This existing problem that we're trying to fix almost overnight didn't happen overnight. So this is more of a consideration for all the members of the board and the members who may eventually vote on something to this effect. That in a sense we're actually asking the members to instantaneously fix something that's been festering and growing for years. Just a point to consider. I don't like the idea of only having two choices. There are always options. Of course, the easy way is often the most painful way, but it's often never the long-lasting way. If we look at the problem of we have an issue, let's continue to throw more money at it, more money, eventually that bank account's going to be empty. So I guess in closing, what I'd really like to see for future boards and for staff as well, just give as many options as you possibly can. It's extremely helpful, especially if you fully explain to someone why they have to do something. It's a lot easier for them to do something they don't want to do or necessarily want to do. So it's just a point. observation. That's all I got.
Thanks, Adele.
That's all I have, sir.
I'll throw one thing in. I understand the point of view that it seems like we're asking the community to fix a problem all at once. I would like to turn everyone's attention to the spreadsheet that has been discussed for the last 2 board meetings that lays out a 10-year plan. And we are not doing everything this year. We are postponing. And there is no guarantee that the board next year will agree with this 10-year plan. So from my perspective, at least, this is far less. Again, option 1 was a much higher option, and that was in itself not even all in 1 year. It was a 2-year increase, and then a very, very low increase after that. This is a much more extended increase. It is a big bite, especially in 1 year. But given that we are the board and we cannot tell next year's board what to do, it's our responsibility. And so I would speak in favor of the motion. Anything? Oh, yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I think is important for us to remember is the reason we have a lot of failing infrastructure right now is because we have gone so painfully slow. We're at a point now where many of the things that we have are on the verge of failure. And if we wait 5, 6, 7 years to do these things, we're going to lose them, and it will cost us much more to replace. So we've already encountered so many additional costs because we have not maintained our building. And I don't know how many of you remember that we lost Barn 7, and we did not get an insurance, what we felt was an adequate insurance claim on it. It only covered our costs because we did not maintain the building. This is what we're facing, and to my way of thinking, much as I feel for those who are struggling with this, I understand an extra $500 a year could be really hard on a lot of people. Hopefully you don't have the same kind of needs in your own home for repairs, but if we don't do the repair, it's like not taking care of a hole in your roof. We are going to continue to incur more and more damage or more deterioration if we don't take some steps to start beating back the deferment. I mean, it just keeps getting higher every year. We have to stop it getting higher and slowly try to get it down. I know $40 a month sounds like a lot, but that's I think, the littlest we can do from a fiduciary responsibility of taking care of the assets of this community.
Mr. President, David.
David.
Yeah, just reflecting on option 2, I know sitting through the Finance Committee, and I thank the Finance Committee for, in effect, kind of, even though that proposal, measure 1 that I proposed back in whatever it was, July something 26th, I believe, was defeated, option 2 is pretty much in line with the kind of thing that I had in mind. So even though in some ways it was defeated, it was kind of given to us back in option 2 if you look out at the 10-year projections. Because we kind of assumed the first year was going to be something like this, 125 or 120, something in that neighborhood. And then the projection was like perhaps 7% plus or minus from there out. I think on this one, the second year was 13, but then after that it was 7%. So in some ways, it's not too far removed from something that I was somewhat upset about, that Dirty Rat, you voted me down, but you provided it. In fact, the Finance Committee presented it in that framework. So, you know, something that I objected to, but it just seemed like it fell in line with a lot of that. So I think that perhaps we're on the right track. That is, you know, Eric mentioned, and some of you have mentioned, this takes us the first step. I mean, it doesn't, in effect, bind any board next year, the year after, whatever. It's a, let's hope, we do that in order to get everything that was talked about by the Finance Committee completed. And every year we have to make the case, is this appropriate, with the understanding that there are some folks that are going to be perhaps hurt by this. And then, as Eric had mentioned, it sounds like there are some considerations of how do you deal with folks that perhaps are in the community, want to stay in the community, but need a little help in that transition. And there may be, I have some ideas on that, but I think several of you have already presented ideas which are workable so that we can keep folks in there while the transition takes place with the changes.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Yeah, that reminded me that I just wanted to make the point that even though we do have 10-year plans, this board can only vote on 1 year. We're voting on 2019. Now, looking forward, we may continue along that path, or the board next year may decide to do something different, but we have presented a 10-year plan, and this is the first step.
Call the question.
Question has been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? Seeing no objection, then all in favor of the motion, please indicate. Okay, all opposed? Adele and Sarah opposed. The motion does pass. So option 2, as appears on page 3, will be proposed in the AGM this year. Okay, now, page 32. All right, this is supposed to be a measure regarding with Hoya, and it refers to page 32, but I think that is incorrect. I think instead it should be page 29.
What is it we're trying to do?
Yeah, well, that's why I had to look to see which page it belonged on. So it's page 29, and this is a ballot measure proposed to be, as discussed in the Document Review Committee and has already been reviewed and approved by Council, a proposal to simplify some language, but primarily get rid of this calendar issue that we have, given that our bylaws state that we have to notify the community within one set of, within a particular time period regarding bylaw amendments and candidates, but the Wacoya law has a different timeline for notifying the community with regard to ballot measures. And what this is doing is simply making them the same thing, so that
How does this correspond to 7E, which is page 29, which is a vote on the bylaw measure?
Well, then there's a darn good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, then why don't we just delay this, because it's not clear
We'll
what was
discuss it on
intended.
that. Yeah, right.
We'll get to it later.
Okay, dog vote.
Cross that off and go to it later. We have dog park.
Sir, at this point, given February or September deadline for the end of the month is moving very quickly, you've asked us to put up a fence. We're not going to get the chance to do it, to permit it. So I'd like to say that at this point, I've talked to the Parks Committee. They would be comfortable if we just moved over the sign that said dog park and moved it over in the alignment where they would want it to be, and they would be comfortable with it until springtime when we had the time to put up a fence.
Okay, so this impacts obviously the signs that are the posts
The
that
scouts,
have
that our
signs.
scouts made.
What about the sign, what about the one that the scout made, which is the nice
We'll,
carved?
we'll move them all over in line.
Okay, so all of them will be in the same?
We'll just move them over, but we're not going to have time to put up a fence between now and the end of the month. And we'll just monitor the situation over the winter.
Questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. New business, Gate 1 Gardens.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that we designate the gardens on Gate 1, entrance and exit, and from now on call them Driscoll Gardens. As most of you know, Betty Driscoll puts in the neighborhood of 700 volunteer hours a year on that garden, an untold number of dollars of her own and donations. She asks, she does not know about this. She asks for nothing in return, but I would like to be able to accept donations to come up with a plaque to put it in that garden to so stipulate that this is Driscoll Gardens.
Okay, so you just made that a motion?
Yes.
And would there be a second?
Seconded.
Yes, Adele?
Adele got it.
Okay. Do we need to discuss this?
How are we going to do the designation? Is there going to be a plaque or?
I will purchase a plaque, and we'll either put it on a rock that's already there or a rock, a piece of concrete that we can place there.
Just a little question, the wording of the plaque.
Driscoll's Garden.
It will just say Driscoll Garden. Perfect, thank you for the clarification. Any further comments? Then I'll call the question. Without objection, all in favor, please indicate.
Thank you, thank you,
And
thank you.
I will vote on that too, so it's completely unanimous.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate your consideration. Fines and fees schedule.
If I may?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
Nope. Do you have a point of personal privilege, or what do you want?
No, sir. All I was going to say that although there are, 8 or 9 pages of this, there are actually only about 3 or 4 things that are going to be changed from our previous fines and fee schedule.
Okay.
And instead of going through each and every one of these, if you would just look at the area, for instance, page 7, this is new to fee schedule, so that's new. Page 8, if it's highlighted, it's a new schedule. Page 9, the same thing. Other than that, everything else is the same.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing, that there are very few things that have changed on this fee schedule, and if we could just look at what's changed. The instructor fees on page 7, as Mike highlighted, are brand new, and these are fees for people who teach classes here at the community center, what those instructors would pay. And those instructors, if they're members or non-members, determines how much they pay. All instructors are required to have an active business license, insurance, proof of certification, and a signed facilities contract with SVCA. The other change that's been made is on page 9. We, on the second line down, it says exterior remodel or addition fee, and it's now at $400 instead of $1.75 per square foot, which was impractical. And then we added a refundable building deposit for an addition or remodel of $750. So they pay that at the beginning, assuming almost everyone gets their deposit back in full. There's very little that goes wrong.
Okay, so I heard you say a fee of $400 as well as this $750.
So the fee of $400 is a flat fee for your addition or remodel. The fee for an addition.
But that's staying the same?
No, it used to be $1.75 per square
Okay, so
foot.
that is actually
new,
an
change.
additional new item.
But it's a change.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we added the deposit, which is refundable at the end of your remodel. It's not a fee, it's a deposit.
That's been in the ACC policy for a long time. We've just not included it in the schedule.
And then we updated all the references. The references used to highlight an old section, 2 old sections that never used to exist, and they were kept in there while the manuals were being updated in case anyone had any historical questions. But now that all the manuals and ACC guidelines are updated, we just have the new references there. And
And
that's it.
there's a page 8
Page 8?
with a yellow line on it.
Oh, mine's not in color.
Group pricing for golf fees.
Oh, no, that's not new.
Oh,
That's, the golf rate page hasn't changed. We'll present the 2019 rates in mid-October.
In mid-October,
I
okay.
simply reprinted the whole schedule.
Great.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. President, make a motion that we accept it.
Sure, you can make a motion, I can discuss.
Okay. Make a motion that we accept the fines and fee schedule as written. On
As
pages 1
submitted.
through 12, and as stipulated by Jennifer. Thank you.
Yep.
Second.
And that was Carol.
Carol, okay.
Okay. Eric, did you have a comment?
One quick formatting comment, I know we love those. I'm looking at page, well, the fines and fees schedule page that talks about the ACC addition remodel change. I can't read the page number. 9?
Yeah, 9.
At the right-hand column, it's titled Member Fine Amount. Would that be more accurately titled Member Fine/Fee Amount or something to that effect?
Correct. I'll make that
In
adjustment.
fact, I would suggest delete everything except member amount.
I can do that as well.
It
And
just
say
makes it
member
makes it
amount.
simple. It's a member amount.
Will do.
Andrew?
And that would be the same here then.
Page 6, main pool, fees are nonprofit and public entities such as school districts looking to use the pool. Are they included in the private party rate?
We have already had a nonprofit group come in this year, and we charged them $140. That was the Bellingham Bay Swim Team. They wanted to use it for 1 week. They're an external customer. We do not give them a break.
It was 150.
Well, excuse me, 150.
The same
And
rate.
we do not give a break.
So it is that rate. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the cost for us to operate a pool, it's the cost for us to operate the pool, if you're nonprofit or not.
Mr. President, Leslie.
Leslie?
Looking back at that page, the first page where you were referencing member fine amount and wanting to change that, why does it even say member? Because if there's a contractor building a house, he's not a member, but you automatically become a member because you build a house here,
There
even
you
if
go.
it's up for sale. So maybe,
The suggestion is to just say amount.
right,
Right.
yeah.
Seems fine with me. Anybody have an objection?
I'll make that change.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr.
Any
President,
further-
David.
Yes, David.
Just one quick comment on going back to that addition remodel, that 750 should be like an asterisk and refundable.
I would be happy under refundable building deposits. I mean, I would be happy to add single-family home, refundable building deposit, addition remodel, refundable building deposit, just so it's clear. Great.
Thank you.
Mr. President, call the question.
Thank you. Just before, are there any other refundable deposits here that are not marked that way? If there are, I'd suggest that you mark them that way.
Will do. There's one other refundable building deposit when people rent out, like, the AM/PM shelter. So I'll mark that as refundable building deposit as well, just so it's clear.
Well, it's not a building deposit. But
Yeah,
we-
Well,
but it's
for a
re-
refundable
refundable
deposit.
deposit. I mean, you could just say that for everything that is refundable. Okay, all right. The question has been called. Unless there's any objection, all in favor, please indicate. Okay, that passes. None in opposition. Okey-doke. WECU credit card borrowing resolution. Looks like
Great.
that's page 14.
It's a treasurer's note.
Yes,
Oh, it starts on 13. Starts on 13, sorry.
They have a hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
so to begin discussion, I would recommend that we approve the updated WECU credit card borrowing resolution as printed in our packet this evening,
Page 13.
starting on page 13.
Second that.
Moved and seconded.
Who was the second down there?
Mike?
Mike, okay.
All right, so let me ask very quickly, the summary of changes, those are the only changes that we're talking about here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes, the actual motion, I mean, the actual resolutions will stand. It's just changing some of the limits. One to keep in mind is that we have removed the general manager from having a credit, was a credit card, right?
The general manager had a debit card.
You had the debit card, right. So he no longer has a debit card. But they are also finding that expenses are increasing. So this helps us in not being late or being short. What happens is they go to their spending limit and then they don't get the bill and don't get it paid in time, that they end up being overextended for the next month.
Just one quick question. I presume in the bullet 2 under summary of changes, the second line says historically the card's been used in emergent situations. I presume that means emergency?
Correct.
Okay. I don't think it needs to be corrected.
Emergent meaning emergency and unexpected.
Okay, because the next line says emergency specifically, so.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Sir.
Quick one. I'd like to point out that we're moving into the season of emergence, as we've read.
Yes.
And
we are.
And so with the loss of the ability of a general manager to expend funds, we need to have others with that ability to expend the funds when in those situations. And so I think that this adjustment is appropriate. I don't think that we're really adding any credit limits overall. We're simply shifting them.
Very good. Further discussion?
Call the question.
Question has been called. Oh, no, sorry.
So it looks like Maddie is an added person to the existing one, so why is it felt, then, why do we think it's necessary for her to have one?
Staff?
There's been a lot of new spending since it's a brand new department. So you have to buy lawn furniture and horseshoes and nets and soccer balls and all these small items for a whole department. And so all that purchasing has been going through the admin spending account on Lisa's card. And it would be prudent to give her her own credit card. That way we know she will be solely responsible for those purchases, and it will free up the limit on the other credit card, which has been run up against several times in the last couple months due to a brand new department.
And then, so the Lisa's credit card is going up, proposed to go up $2,000 then, and those are the only two changes. Am I reading that correctly?
The Maddie Otley was added. It increased the limits of accounts 1, 3, and 5 by $1,000.
Oh, thank you.
You can see on page 15 the old policy, excuse me, and the new on page 14, account 1 by $2,000 and accounts 3 and 5 by $1,000. The debit card, we generally kept $9,000 in that account. So we added $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to the credit cards, but we did historically keep $9,000 in the debit card account.
Has there been any violations to our credit card policy?
There has not.
Any further? Yes, sir.
As a part of this resolution, Do we also need to, or maybe not as a part of, but additionally, do we need to change our association credit card policy, which stipulates a maximum amount of $6,500 for any individual card?
We do, Eric, thank you, on page 16, yes, to $8,500.
Can we make that a part of this motion, or just, because it's a policy, it should be a separate motion, I would think?
You can do it either way. I think for simplicity, why don't we just say we are changing the resolution, and then separately we'll address the policy. I think that's simpler.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get to that later. Right now, we're only talking about the resolution itself. Anything else?
Call the question?
Questions called on the resolution. Without objection, then, all in favor, please indicate. That's unanimous?
No, it's not.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Excuse me.
Didn't see it.
You didn't see it, no.
There's
a reason for that, yeah, right.
Okay, I moved my head too fast.
You didn't see your hands down.
Okay, all opposed? Thank you. This passes. Now I believe there's another motion in order.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to amend the association corporate credit card policy, which here is not numbered.
Page 16.
It's page 16. However, all of our policies have a year
Usually, yeah. This one
and
doesn't.
number, so I'm not certain what it is. But I would like to amend it in any case to change the in no case exceeding maximum of $6,500 in the third paragraph. And I would like to change that to the new maximum, which is $8,500.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Call the question.
Question is called. Unless there's an objection, seeing none, all in favor, please indicate. That is unanimous. I double-checked that time. All right. Now, it says 2019 budget measure number 1. What on this do we need to pay attention to that is different from what we have already voted on this evening?
Just a thorough.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm directing that question specifically to the treasurer. Is there something that we need to know and act on that we have not yet acted on?
I'm not really certain, except that I believe we as a board need to approve each member, or measure, sorry, each measure that is submitted for the ballot. And I've actually talked to Jennifer, walked through this with her. I've got a couple of minor changes, but essentially, one of the things that she has done is worked with our council to make certain that all of the requirements of the new WCOA law are included in this. And there are a lot of things that have not been required before, but are now. So I think it's important for us to go through it, and I think we should approve it as the approved ballot measure that goes into the ballot.
When you say go through it, do you mean word by word,
Well,
item by item?
Not necessarily. I'm hoping everybody's read it, and if there are any questions, I would like to point out the things that I've recommended to be changed, or it's just mostly typographicals. But one of the things we have to do in order to get this ready for printing is make sure that we review it, and if there's anything that we need to change, tonight's the night to do that.
well,
So I move
yes.
that we, may I?
Go ahead, yes.
I move that we approve Measure 1 as written and proposed in our packet for this evening. That would take us through page number
21 to
28.
21 to
From 21 to 28.
Okay, 21 to 28.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So now, part of the discussion will be you stepping us through wherever in here we need to note a change.
Do you want to start, Jennifer, with just an introduction to what is in here, and then I'll mention the things, or unless you want to, because I know you and I have talked about it as far as the changes.
Sure. So Measure 1 follows the same format as last year. We have the shall the SVCA's 2019 annual consolidated budget of $4,335,298 be approved or rejected. The first picture table on there is the 2019 consolidated budget. You have operations, the special assessment, SURF, roads, and mailbox funds. Then there's what the proposed assessments will be for both developed and vacant lots, monthly and annually. On the next page, page 22, we have the proposed 2019 consolidated budget, including 2018 projected income and expenses, and the 2019 budget income in detail. As noted on the next page, 2018 actuals are through June 30th, and then the projection from July 1st through to the end of the year. We have what our projections are for SURF, roads, and mailbox, and then several notes, which I think are important, that dues and assessments are due on the first day of the billing period or the first of each month, and that it's calculated based on an anticipated 91% collections rate, that the roads budget includes a minimum of $102,547 for the major maintenance of ditches, culverts, and swales per the 2016 SGM, and the operations budget includes a minimum of $40,800 for ACC support, $38,895 for an additional maintenance person, $20,000 in hazardous trees, and $24,000 for essential building maintenance. And we also included $35,000 for the new home construction fee, which is offset by the ACC coordinator expense. The last bullet point on page 23, I would like to remove that bullet point. I don't have it. I covered it over in my copy. It says 2018 projected net loss and the 2019 projected net income from the operations special assessment to pay for recreation maintenance and operations is $83,579, and that's how much the projection is. And you'll see on the next page, I listed the budget amount, which is slightly different, but it wasn't supposed to go here.
Okay,
so I'd like that removed.
So could we simply, is there anybody opposed to removing that bullet?
No. At recommendation of staff and especially the county manager, I would say.
So why don't we make these as very loose motions to amend rather than getting really in-depth, just say, I move to
amend that we remove the last bullet point on page 23, which references the net projected income from operations special assessment.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove that bottom bullet point on 23.
Call the question.
Is there any need to discuss?
No, can we just?
All right, then all in favor, please indicate. Okay, that looks unanimous.
Then on the page 24, we have significant increases and decreases in the operations budget from 2018 to 2019. It lists out the dues and assessments, recreation department, golf department, that the marina revenue projection has increased, but we haven't changed the rates at the marina. New home construction fees, we don't predict market trends, so we've just forecasted 10 new buildings. We can't say how many are going to be next year. And that's how much we forecasted at the beginning of 2018. But since we did a mid-year spending plan, we adjusted it with the amount of homes that we knew, which was the $90,000. So that's why there's such a big gap there. There's also payroll changes. Anticipated increases in medical insurance, the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and special events. Those were what I saw as the significant increases and decreases. And then on pages 25 to 28, we have the new required reserve study disclosures. So what's in here meets the requirements of the new WCOA law. And so there are specific things that we have to say, what the last reserve study was, what it was dated, who our reserve consultant was, if they were independent, that these reserve studies are supplemental to the maintenance and operating budget. So all the language that's here on page 25 is what's required by the new law, including what's not funded in the 2018 reserve study.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Page 25, paragraph 2, where it's second sentence, I guess, where it's talking about the association's reserve study. Move the apostrophe, please. One association. Yeah.
Well, move the apostrophe on associations. There was some additional comments that Carol had, and on the third paragraph, the second sentence, to
Let's
have
do
it.
this, let's try and do it one at a time. So we've got association should be association
Apostrophe S.
apostrophe S. All right, so let's have a motion there.
For that
Can
one,
we just make it a Scrivener's error?
That's all right.
there.
Whatever you'd like,
Yeah.
whatever you'd like.
Just-
Okay, Scrivener's error, change. All right, next.
On the third paragraph down, it should say to fund the reserve study as well as, there needs to be another as.
Yeah, okay, add the word as.
As well as. Thank you.
In the fifth paragraph down, towards the end of the first sentence.
Why don't we treat, I'm sorry, why don't we treat that as a Scrivener's error too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then,
It
sorry.
should say compliant. It says, what does it say?
Complaint.
Complaint. It says complaint. It should be compliant.
I like that one.
Well, people have been complaining about the RCW.
Oh, yeah. Okay, another Scrivener's error.
Right.
And then one other is on the next paragraph, there's an extra space between special assessment and the period.
And the period, right. First line, yeah.
here, right here.
I can't even see it.
Okay,
I have
Oh,
one more
down
to
in there,
skip.
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Where is this?
Is that the bottom of the page you're talking about, that space?
That space, it would be on the paragraph starting special assessments near the bottom.
Okay.
End of the first sentence. There's an extra space.
Yeah, space between the assessment and the period.
Hey.
Okay, somebody said there was something above that?
Never mind.
Okay, all right.
Does that count for?
Okay, 1, 2, 3,
The
4
only-
on that page.
The only other typographical or Scrivener's error that I saw was on page 21, where the Carol saw. And halfway down the page, in the paragraph, it starts this consolidated budget measure. In the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down, halfway through, members should be capitalized. And to have the dues payers in the picture below have a comma in the 2,870, to have it 2,000, comma 870.
Jennifer, say again, please.
So in the dues table?
Yep.
The bottom of page 21, this is based on 2,870 dues payers.
Yes.
To add a comma in, so it's
It's not the year
2,870.
2870.
Oh, I
It's not
got
the year 2870, right? It's 2,870 people.
Gotcha.
We have advanced.
Those are the only items that I saw, that and Carol saw.
That's it?
That's it.
Well, that's great. Only Scrivener's errors.
No, I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
I've just been sitting here patiently while you've all been going through.
Yep.
We reference in different changes and stuff in the notes on page 23.
Okay.
We say, in notes, we say that roads budget includes a minimum of this amount of money per 2016 special general meeting, SGM. Then there's also, in the line below that, we reference another SGM. And yet on page 25, we say that we have only one active special assessment. but we also acknowledge all these other active numbers in the notes to the budget.
We actually do only have one active special assessment. Those amounts that are called out on page 23 were not technically part of a special assessment. They were part of an assessment. And so, I mean, I suppose that the board wouldn't have to include them in future years. However, we have been, because they were not a special assessment. It was an assessment.
I'm sorry,
Please explain that. I'm a little lost as to why they would and how they would change from special assessment to non-special assessment.
Well, my understanding is that in an assessment that we ask for a dues increase to cover something, but that, and this is my understanding, that legally you're not required to continue to have those funds available just for that item, that the only way that you're legally bound to have those funds for one item, such as the pool special assessment, is to have it be a special assessment and then the funds are fenced. Now, perhaps I'm misunderstanding. However, I believe that it was the intent of that SGM to have those funds continue to pay for those items. And so in the spirit of the intent and to let the association know that we are continuing to fund those items per that special general meeting, I wanted to list them out.
Having listed them out, is there a problem in referring to them as actual special, or active, active special assessments on this next page?
They're not referred to as special assessments. It's that they were voted in at a special general meeting.
That's interesting. I certainly hadn't thought of them that way. I'd always thought of them as special assessments. 5-year special assessment for roads and a 5-year special assessment for whatever else it was.
No, they
Ditches.
were assessments. So we increased roads as an assessment and we increased operations as an assessment. They were not special assessments.
There was no time limit on those votes. Those were in perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
So every year we list them showing these funds that were voted in 2016 are actually going to this event. Different, we had a SGM that's had a special assessment to fence the money and put it into an account for a specific event for 5 years.
A specific time limit.
For a specific time limit, I understand that part. My understanding, though, is that these funds were, in fact, roped off and intended only for the items that they were originally activated to cover. So I guess in some respect, I don't care, but for purposes of making sure that the community understands that the funds are still being roped off, again, loosely, I would say it would make sense to call them special assessments. But I leave that to other financial minds.
I mean, according to the auditors and down in my accounting department, it's an assessment.
It's just a regular
Just
assessment.
a regular assessment, added to roads and added to operations.
So to be clear, then, that means that they are available to be dipped into for other purposes?
They're fungible. But we specifically show them every year. You voted for this, this is what we're doing with the money.
Let's not have it be fungible. Let's have some continuity in what we're doing and include it in the ballot measures. So that way, no matter who is here and who staff is or who the board is, that the next group of people can refer to the prior ballot measure and see that those funds should be put there.
Okay, so it's highlighted, and that's the best you can do with it.
Yes.
Any further questions? Okay, keep on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Keep on.
No, that's all I had, sir.
Yeah.
Call the question?
All right, no other corrections have been noted, and unless someone objects, because they have another question.
Sorry, quick question.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
It's not on here, and I was trying to remember, so on page 21, it says ballot, shall the SBC's budget be approved or rejected? So are the options on the actual, this might be an NNE question, are the options on the actual ballot approve or reject? They're not yes or no, right? I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
One point I'd like to make before you take a vote.
Yep.
State law says you don't approve this budget. It says you adopt this budget. if I'm not mistaken. So whoever makes the motion, if they, I know we've been talking about approving this budget and stuff, but if whoever makes the motion, final motion for the thing, if they would please adopt.
Yeah, Linda, I agree with you. I do remember that. It must be adopted and
Yes,
voted
the
upon.
board.
Right. What was it? What did the motion say?
Well, right now, it says on page 21, shall the SDCA 2019 be approved or rejected? Is the suggestion that it say adopted or rejected?
It says in the state law, adoption of budgets, assessments, and special assessments within 30 days after adoption of any proposed budget for the common interest community, the board must provide a copy of the budget to all the unit owners. So that's
You are
why I'm asking.
you're mistaking one thing.
Okay.
That is referring to the board vote.
Yes,
That
that's
is
why.
not referring to the member vote.
Right. Yeah.
This question is to refer to the member vote. And my understanding is that this is perfectly fine as worded.
No, what I'm saying is when you finally say, does the board, it isn't approve, adopt this consolidated budget.
That's why I asked, what is the motion?
Yeah,
okay.
What was the motion?
Who made the
It
motion?
was my motion,
Yes, ma'am.
and I would like to amend the motion to say, I move that we adopt this measure
Okay.
Thank you.
As amended and corrected.
as amended and corrected.
But we will not rewrite the sentence. This stays accepted. or
Correct.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely
no.
correct.
Okay, thank you. I did not understand your question. Okay,
Will someone second my?
Second.
all right. That's kind of loosey-goosey, but it's good enough.
Well, I'm starting to think a little different now.
Yeah.
And that is, okay, we adopted the budget before.
Right.
We already adopted the
We're
budget.
not
Now we
adopting
are
it now.
approving the measure.
Well, now we're approving a particular measure, yes,
Right.
for wording that budget.
Right. And so the original motion was to approve Measure 1 on page 21 to 28. That is correct.
I'm not sure it really makes any difference
Okay.
one way or the other. We approve or we
It
adopt.
would mean that she doesn't have to bring up an amendment to the
Right,
original
exactly. We don't
motion.
need the amendment.
That is correct.
And
That's why I say, this is loosey-goosey because we didn't make it as an amendment.
I'm going
She
back
just
to the
restated
original
her
motion.
motion.
She did make it as amendment.
She would like to amend her motion to state, is how she said it.
Yeah, oh, okay. Right.
So if it's so directed, I can withdraw. My concern is, do we need to go back and revote
That's
on
what I'm
the
looking at,
original
yes.
motion because we moved it rather than adopting it? We approved it rather than
That's
adopting
more
it.
of her issue,
That,
yeah.
I would say is more
That's
her
what
issue.
Leslie's saying.
Then let's
yeah.
go back and see what was the wording of the first motion.
Mr. President, if
Can
I
we
may.
finish
Hold on,
this first?
hold on.
All I've written down is option 2, page 3. I did not capture a verb.
It has, excuse me, to me, that's a dues measure that just, it says, these are the dues. This measure 1 is what encapsulates
The
The
entire
dues
budget.
and everything else.
consolidated
Okay.
budget, and is what I
You're right.
believe, in order with the whole thing of the reserve study and everything, that needs to be adopted. That's my point.
I think that solves it for
Okay.
me, anyway. Yes, Mike?
All right, so I'm going to disagree. I'm going back to Leslie's. We are not adopting a budget. We are approving or rejecting a measure. That's all. The measure up on top, big black bold letters. Nothing to do with what's underneath until you read it, of course.
Well, the only reason I would quibble with that is then we need a separate motion to actually adopt the budget.
Right.
That then is reflected in this ballot measure.
But we're not even talking about the budget yet. We were talking about the measure. So it's two separate things. If you want to go back and approve the budget
Staff
before
input.
you,
We would just propose to you that you write this up as, shall we adopt and/or approve? Make the statement that way. That way you're covered both ways.
Covered both ways, but make sure that it would also say the measure and the budget that it
And/or.
incorporates.
Right. So it's just, you're not sure, and you could twist this many different ways.
Yeah.
So shall we move to adopt and/or approve the and?
Yeah, adopt and/or approve ballot 1 as corrected, which includes a proposed budget.
That's correct. And that, whether it's got to be the approval or the acceptance, it doesn't matter. You're covered.
All right, so would somebody make that motion as moved? Just say, I so move.
I so move.
Second.
Moved and
I have
seconded.
no idea.
All right, now,
Please let us move on.
Okay.
this has been confusing to everybody, but basically, all we have essentially done is amend the underlying motion.
Right.
And so now we are at a new motion, which is as stated. Adopt and/or amend the ballot measure and the budget that it includes.
Adopt or approve.
Adopt and approve.
Adopt and approve,
Not amend.
and/or approve.
Yeah, you said amend.
Adopt and/or
I'm
approve.
sorry, yeah,
Measure
sorry.
number 1, pages 21 and 28, which includes the budget.
Which includes the budget.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda.
Can I call the question?
I don't know. Does anybody have any objection to calling the question?
Well, I'll call the question.
You just did. All in favor? All in favor? Okay. All opposed? There we go. So I'm going to.
We're up to. I voted against the budget too.
Oh.
6, 7,
I thought he said it was unanimous.
8.
Now we come to the,
Right, I'm going
Page
to
29.
I'm going to sign and give to you the pages. all these
Personal,
pages with-
personal privilege, 5 minute, please.
With some change. Is that a personal privilege?
Please.
Okay. Recess for personal privilege until, yeah, why don't we just say 9:30?
okay, it's
9:30.
9:21.
It's hard enough for me to be normal on a normal night, but I'm just getting over a cold. My head is still
Hammering.
obviously.
There's a light.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item is item E, ballot measure number 2. And that one is the alignment of the timeline. So that we don't have the problem with calendaring that we did this year, because it was a royal pain and caused over the last week or so some very panicked conversations.
Much needed help given.
So in any event, it's really straightforward. It's as submitted on page 29.
So can we just make a motion as submitted?
Second.
Yes, sir. You just made that motion and he just seconded it.
So now can we call the question?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I have questions.
I want to make one comment first. I want to ensure that people understand that this is not adopting the entire new measure in RCW 6490. This only addresses the one section having to do with voting on the budget, and it calls out the timeline. So that is the only thing that this changes, is just the timeline for voting, because the new timeline does not match our bylaws.
And I'll just say, in further clarification, that actually it doesn't even address our timeline for voting, because that's established by law. This is regarding only the notice of a meeting at which directors are to be elected and bylaw amendments are to be voted on. That's the only thing it addresses.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess this question will relate to the next two. When the attorney was here and talked to us about this new law, he brought up and made the comment that he did not recommend changing our bylaws at all with this law, because if a case were to be brought against it and it was changed, then our bylaws would be changed as well. So he specifically didn't recommend changing. So I'm wondering why, I guess twofold. One, why we're changing anything based on what he said, and two, how we're picking and choosing what parts to change.
Because we've already had a problem and difficulty dealing with the calendar this year. We're trying to make things easy for N&E next year. This is a minor, non-substantive change, and that's why we're changing it, is to make sure that we're not forced to do what we were forced to do this year, which is both adhere to a bylaw timeline and adhere to a Wacoya timeline. Now there's only one timeline, and that happens to be Wacoya. If perchance Wacoya were to be overturned as it applies to this HOA, then we can always go in and redo it and do it back. Whereas what Rich suggested to us, did not say we were forced to do, but suggested, is that we not attempt to muck around with the actual substantive measure of budgets, dues and assessments, and special assessments. So that's not being addressed here, not at all. Sir.
I'd like to point out that we have had a continuing problem with the calendar, because under the old statute, 6438-025, budget is ratification not less than 14 nor more than 60. And that is different than what our standards were in the bylaws to begin with. And so this has been a continuing problem that's just been highlighted this year because of obvious reasons. And so it makes sense to get this corrected at any time, but now's the right time.
Further comments?
Now can we call a question?
Question has been called. Unless there's any objection, all in favor of putting this on the ballot, please indicate. Okay, all opposed? Thank you.
Mr. President, the next one you have has comments in it still in red from Rich's comments. in talking with Director Bradley, she asked that we bring it to the board showing Rich's comments so people could see the input. Is that correct, Linda?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Hey, I'm showing my age.
Ma'am.
Okay, so then let us go ahead, before we make a motion, go through this and take a look at his formatting suggestions. The first thing that I see is on page 30, and that is a comment box. Okay, the original language was utilize electronic voting by whatever means provided, was to essentially say whatever the vendor offered, that's what we would use. He says it's not clear. The association is permitted to institute and utilize electronic voting through a third-party vendor selected by the board. So his suggestion is to delete that phrase by whatever means provided, probably also delete the commas on both sides, and then add the phrase selected by the board at the end. Does anybody have any objections with that? All right, so we'll just say his sentence as worded in the red box.
We'll take care of that entire sentence.
We'll just replace the sentence in white with the sentence in the red box.
Okay.
Okay, his next comment. All right. In this article. Now, it is not clear at all what he's talking about because he doesn't say where. Well, I understand down here, but this comment says mail ballot reference.
What it says to me is you overlooked this section, and that should also be here.
Overlook
Yeah,
this section.
Right. Change the word email to ballot.
Okay, so in other
There.
words, adding Article 3A5 and reword to the measure and rewording it by taking the word
Email out.
mail and just say ballot.
Ballot, right.
Okay, so.
Could you say that again, sir?
All right. So he's basically suggesting that what he has in underlined text be added to this particular ballot measure because it wasn't in the ballot measure before. And and he's saying, oh, you forgot this spot.
Still not sure where.
Yeah. This entire section.
Right here?
He wants to add this. This wasn't existing prior. It's like that's what he didn't consider this section when we were talking about the.
Okay, thank you.
Has everybody got that now?
Thank you.
Okay, so does anybody have any objection? We'll just say we'll add this portion into what has been proposed or has been put into your packet.
We're basically accepting the attorney's comments in both places.
In both places, essentially. And then we can now move this and vote on it.
And that's all.
I'll
No,
make one more
no.
change.
32?
You have another change?
I'd like to, if you look, Rich has added a whole section 7 voting, A and B on page 30. I would propose
Wait a minute, page.
we move that because at the bottom of the page, we have and had Article 2, association meetings, quorum and voting, section 7 voting. We had sections D and E, but can we put A and B above D and E rather than leaving it floating around up above for some reason? That's the only thing I didn't understand.
It's not explained at all, so without, Eric, do you have your copy of the, I know I do.
Right here. What are we looking at? I was looking at
Let's see.
Section 7.
Should be section 7, but he doesn't say what article So I presume,
I'm assuming it's voting,
Voting.
because that's where all the rest of the bylaws with that
Yeah.
are entailed.
probably
Article
Article
2.
2. Article 2.
It is
Page
Article 2.
19 of the bylaws, if you have a.
So we don't have C.
Okay, so I will add up here Article 2. It says Section 7. All right.
Okay.
Paragraph B below, there's no change there.
Yeah, right here.
But,
By ballot.
by ballot. Okay, so in other words, this is another place where the mailing word was overlooked.
Yes.
And it was overlooked twice, which he's crossed through twice.
Yep.
Okay, so he's also suggesting, actually, the only thing he's really suggesting is a change to subparagraph B. He's not suggesting any change to subparagraph A, so I would cross that out.
We did, and you don't think we need to have that in the measure for any reason?
Oh, not at all. We're only changing words in subparagraph B. So that's the only thing that needs to be there.
And C is also missing, so that.
And C is missing, so, and again, we don't
Just
need
the
to
ones-
quote stuff that we're not
Yeah,
changing.
because C has
only
absolutely
confusing.
nothing to do with
Right,
mail
yeah.
ballot.
Okay, now this becomes more clear. So this would be another addition, Article 2, Section 7.
And add it above D and E there, where we've already put it in the measure.
Now, this doesn't match. I'm looking at section D. And
Article,
what is written here in section D does not match what's in the bylaws.
no, because this is a new addition.
new section.
This is what Inani suggested.
Oh, okay. Right, okay.
So
So
this,
if we may do that, that's my only comment to this, rather than leaving it dangling out in the middle of the measure.
yeah, it should be put into, actually, it should be added just under the paragraph that follows it, Article 2, Association Meetings, waiver of notice, Section 4, and then it should go to Section 7, paragraphs B, D, and E.
Yes, sir.
All right. So there, B, D, and E. Okay, Linda, does that take care of everything
That does.
as you
I
understand
think
it?
there's just a typo that he caught on page
What I-
32, which is the word amendment.
He's crossed out the proper spelling and has added one with an E in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what that's all about.
No.
No, it should.
Let us
Something's wrong there.
let us delete that. It should be amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was interesting when I looked at his comments, I pulled it up on my computer, and actually Merriam-Webster accepts it both ways, amendments and amendments.
Okay, I guess I'm
However,
old-fashioned. I don't say irregardless, and I don't say mischievous. So I'm not saying amendment.
Irascibly accepted.
Okay, so we'll keep that as amendment.
I just wanted to note that because it's kind of hanging out there all by itself.
Okay, yes, thank you. It should be on the same page.
Well, and it says in the last sentence, amendment is spelled without the E, so
Yeah.
let's be
Yeah.
consistent.
Yep, yep.
So do you need a motion on that, sir?
We do at this point.
Okay, then the motion will be the bylaws be amended to allow for electronic voting measure, ballot measure 3, as stated and as amendment.
No, amended. Amended.
Amendment.
Second. Okay, moved and amended it. Okay, so is there any need for further discussion on this? I don't see anybody jumping at the opportunity.
Call the question.
Question called. All in favor, please indicate. That's unanimous, so this will also be ballot measure number 3. And now we go to
GM search.
the GM search. I will turn that over to Director McRoberts, who has been, thank goodness, spearheading this effort so far. And explain to us, so the board really hasn't
What I've
voted
been
on
doing
this.
is, no, you
Yeah,
haven't.
what
And this is
have-
what I'm going to bring,
There we go.
suggestions to the board. I have information from 3 different search teams. 2 of them are devoted specifically just to GMs for HOAs. The other one is another professional search team that works with both government entities and has done some work with HOAs before.
Well, by the way, how did you pick these folks?
Well, 2 of them have been recommended by Clark Champion, who is himself, has been a long-term general manager. He is a resident of the community. The third one is someone that was working with the Water District when they found their general manager, and I was impressed with their work and the help that they gave to the district. And finding candidates, quality candidates, and helping with the search. Now, without these documents in your hands, it's going to be a little difficult just to go through this. And this is something that we really do need to start soon if we're going to have somebody on the ground at the beginning of the year. You're looking at the second week in September already. It's going to be probably a week or 2. If we, no matter which one of these firms we pick, we will have to sit down with them and go over what it is that we are looking for. I also have here the general manager's qualifications that were used in the last search 2 years ago. And for the most part, they are usable again. There's a couple of things that have changed, like they do mention the YMCA here, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that we can go over this and quickly come to an agreement on what the qualifications ought to be. The first one here is from Sonia Prothman, who is the firm that did the district search, and they are in the Seattle area. She sent an entire description here on what sort of help they are going to give us, and with a timeline talking about starting right now, talking to the board members who will be involved in this, and gathering information for the profile and setting that all up on September 24th, hopefully being able to post it and start advertising for candidates. If it's September 24th, then by October 21st, would like to mark that as the application close date, weeks of October 22nd to 29th, screening the applications, interviewing the top 6 to 12 candidates, doing all of the background checking on them that she can, do for us. And then on November 8th, coming to the board during a work session to review the semifinalists and pick finalists. And what we're looking at here, let me see, numbers. This is just general numbers. The fee for conducting the search, the sourcing, screening, recruitment is $9,500. There are other expenses that will be involved having to do with advertising, et cetera, for another, I think we're looking at another $10,000 or so for the expenses that will be involved in doing this.
When you say another?
Yes, right, in addition. So I'm looking at about $22,000. This is just kind of a general number based on this information. I will scan all of these and send it out to the whole board.
Thank you very much.
Point of clarification, is this the Prothman Group you said? You said Sonia Prothman. Is this the Prothman Group that is the company?
Yes, the Prothman Company.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Here, Prothman.
Yeah.
The second one that I have is a company called, let me get all of these pages. Okay, yeah, that goes into the third one. Management Matters, and this is a company that is back in Pennsylvania. They have done, focuses specifically on general managers for homeowners associations. Let me a number here on this one. The cost for Sudden Valley Association to manage the entire recruitment and screening process for a new general manager is $29,750. Included are the following: telephone meetings with the search committee, advertising for the position, administrative support for the search, including office and related expenses, review of resumes received, and distribution of follow-up questionnaire and request for detailed information to those making the first cut. Review of supplementary information received in order to narrow the field down to approximately 10. First round interviews that they will do via telephone. Travel expenses to Sudden Valley for the second and third round of interviews. Testing expense for the 3 finalists by an independent testing group that will provide the profile and narrative for each of the finalists. The expenses of background and reference checks for the candidates selected by the board. Assistance to the board in developing a formal offer of employment and employment contract if desired, and development of an announcement for the Sudden Valley Community Association's new general manager. So that's what that one is.
Can you repeat the name of that one again? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat the name of that one again? The company?
That one is called Management Matters.
Thank you.
And it is in Pennsylvania. Now, the third one is, I'm relying here just on an email exchange with this person, and it is with a, what's the company? Her name is Julie Adamen, A-D-A-M-E-N. And from the top.
It's Julie Adamen and Associates.
And Associates, okay. What have I'm looking for where she put in the numbers, the 29th. Advertise the position in my own publication and website. She does have a website if you're looking for that. It is online at Adamen and Associates, which is directed only at our industry. I have 2 national publications that drive people directly back to the site and the jobs. If I don't know the respondents, which is highly unlikely, I am 1 degree of separation from them, having been in the industry for so long doing this type of work. I vet the candidates not only for qualifications, but for fit. I do not do background checks on advice of counsel, as I cannot guarantee where the information goes once the board members receive it. But as Sudden Valley has its own HR department, that shouldn't be a problem for you. Coach the board in the interview process, advise the board on appropriate compensation, benefits, job description, etc. I've been in the business for 21 years in recruiting and placing community association managers and have been extremely successful doing so. She gave me some numbers here, and I didn't highlight them. Yeah, as I recall, her number was about 25,000, and that was just the total number to do all of the background work. I strongly suggest using a search firm, because 2 years ago when we did a search for a candidate, a couple of legal issues arose, and we were advised by our attorney that some mistakes had been made, and I don't want to get into that this time. These people are professionals. They know how to advertise, select candidates, do the background checks, et cetera, et cetera. And in looking for a qualified person for this position, I think this is the best way to go. Where do we go from here? What's the board's desire in this?
Well, let me suggest something to start with. First of all, we need to take a look at all this material.
Yes.
All the board members need to take a look at the material and think about whether or not we want to do it that way. I strongly urge the board to use a professional search team. That doesn't mean that the board or members will be shut out. What it means is we won't be making legally damaging mistakes. And if we do, then we have somebody we can point a finger at other than ourselves. As I mentioned to a member who was voicing concern about this issue, I think going third party is important because it is third-party, independent. It may not be the cheapest way, but it is a balanced way. And I very highly recommend always, for anything, using the best available knowledge and talent that we can get hold of. And for something like this, which is a huge investment on our part and a real big risk, as we saw from a couple of GMs ago, it can work out badly. That's why I prefer doing this, but whether we use these folks or whether we use somebody else, I certainly have no real opinion. It's not my area of expertise. Sir?
When would you like to have this on the agenda?
I would like to have this on the agenda. If we don't have a special meeting to address it, then we should have it at least at the very next board meeting. Now, the very next is 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, that puts us at
That's
the
pretty
end of
late.
September, which kind of, we're pushing up against the window at this point, yeah.
We very
Now,
much are.
a question also, inasmuch this is somewhat about personnel, is this a closed meeting or is this an open meeting?
Well, right now, this is an open meeting because this is a contract with an
Okay.
outside individual. We're not talking about particular individuals in here. This is a service that we're contracting for.
Then I make a suggestion that we have a special meeting next Thursday.
Okay, and that's a suggestion. Let's keep that as a suggestion and go around, because I've seen several hands on both sides of my head. I saw Carol's.
I'd like to suggest that we have a special meeting Sunday afternoon and get it started so we can start on Monday. We've kind of waited, I think, as long as we need to or should on this. We want to make sure that we don't leave Mitch in a problem situation at the end of the year, or Jennifer or any of the staff, and it could take a while for us to find the right individual.
Who else had their hand up? Who was first?
I'm sorry, I wasn't even
No,
paying
that's all right.
attention.
Okay, you two guys have your hands up. All right, David, go.
Just comment, I concur with the approach, that kind of thing, and I also with regards to the timing, because this takes time. I mean, it's the sense is as soon, I mean, for me, I'd like to roll tonight and say, let's go with it, give.
Yeah, I need this in your hands before you do that.
Yeah, I want to see it before I
Yeah.
decide.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think getting it between now and Sunday for a meeting, I think is certainly important to do.
Mr.
I would say get this on the agenda tomorrow for a special board meeting on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock downstairs. Or we could do it up here, I don't.
No.
No, but Sunday afternoon is not a good time for that. There's no football game on this Sunday.
But
so.
CTK is,
Sunday, 1 p.m., essentially NPR.
They often show the football game here on the big screen, so that's.
That has to go out tomorrow then, if we're going to do that.
Right, okay. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Funding source, I'm assuming it's gonna be the UDR. I don't think the board has that much money in their account for funding. So I'm
We'll
assuming
take it
it's
out of
gonna
your
come out of
salary.
the UDR. It's just to know where it's coming out of.
I would presume that that is a question more for the treasurer and the accountant.
sir, is this a closed session meeting?
No, it is not.
Sunday.
All right.
It's in the conference room, though. It's not accessible to membership.
She meant NPR.
NPR.
Okay. Oh, I thought you said the conference room.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so now the question was, essentially for Jennifer and Carol is where's the funding going to come from? And the suggestion was UDR.
Sunday conversation.
That may be, it may be better for Sunday, but at least you know, if you can't answer tonight, you know you'll need to answer it Sunday.
I concur. UDR.
UDR.
Yep.
Carol?
I concur.
UDR. There's your answer.
Perfect, it's just to know where the money's coming
That's,
from.
no. Perfectly valid question. Anything else?
David's up.
Just a quick thing, in terms of getting the right person, that might be here for 4 or 5 years or something like that, that's a modest amount of money spread over those years, I mean, what we're talking about. So in terms of, any complaints about that amount. Granted, we have to take it out of something, but in terms of it's a good, good expense.
Well, then, Carol?
In favor of using a professional, I did a lot of interviewing and so forth. It was a full-time job for me to find just management level people, and I normally didn't have more than 1 or 2 to work on at a time, but it was a full-time job. And I don't think any of us on the board have that kind of time available to find the right person. It's a lot of work.
Okay, so what I've heard so far seems to indicate a general consensus that a special board meeting is necessary for Sunday at 1 o'clock. Is there any objection to that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sundays for my family time.
Is your family time? Is there an alternative that would work for everybody?
Anytime but Saturday or Sunday.
Excuse me?
For me, anytime but Saturday or Sunday.
Anytime but Saturday or Sunday.
What about Monday?
Monday, yeah.
Yeah, Monday night wouldn't be a bad time. Certainly not for me. I could live with that. Wednesday, I've got a county.
There's a football game Monday night.
Yeah.
I'm so very sorry.
I'm going to do Monday next week is okay, but I'm going out of town Tuesday.
Well, then we can't do it much later than Monday. I mean, I would like to do it on Sunday, but I would prefer having Odell there, myself.
Yeah.
So, Monday at 7 p.m. here?
It should be a short.
I hope it's short, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a one agenda item.
One agenda item. Everybody's going to have the documents in front of them between now and then. Yes, sir.
Odell says on Monday he's off at 4 o'clock. I didn't ask Sarah yet what time she's off.
4:30, but that doesn't put me here till 5:30.
5:30 is different than 7, though.
Well,
of course.
we could get here, we could start at 6. We don't have to start at 7.
Yeah,
I could do 6.
Okay, Monday evening.
How about Andrew? He also works.
I won't be available Monday, but as your interim director, feel free to move forward without me on your date.
Can you come anytime on Monday?
I cannot.
You cannot, okay. All right, well, so no days are good for everybody.
Sunday doesn't work for one, Monday doesn't work for another.
So you might as well go back to Sunday.
We can go, how about, oh no, because we got to get the notice out.
24 hour or 48 hours.
48-hour notice, so Friday won't work. That's tomorrow.
Right.
We can roll the clock back, send out notice 2 days ago.
The unpopular alternative would be for the executive committee to do it and then ratify it later on.
Yeah, that would be very unpopular, number one, and
We
I
need a
don't
full
think
board
it's,
discussion.
I don't think it's necessary.
I agree, but I'm just, those are alternatives.
Okay, let's go backwards on that one and say if we meet on Saturday and the board discusses, and then what the board agrees to, the executive committee can vote on Sunday or whenever.
Is that fair?
Can we do that?
Odell can't make
Oh, he can't make
Saturday.
Or Friday, or Friday, tomorrow.
It sounds like somebody's going to be missing, either Andrew or Odell, so.
Well,
we flip a coin, or?
We can't have an official open board meeting tomorrow.
Right.
Oh, right.
But we can have an unofficial, nonetheless
Can we
open.
meet as the committee of the whole, just to discuss?
That's what I'm saying, is we can gather together, not vote, have a discussion, reach some sort of a general understanding, and I think as Leslie suggested, then have the executive committee meet in open session and vote to basically adopt the general consensus reached earlier. So, yeah, I mean, this is getting very complex, but...
I'm extremely against that option. I really, really would dislike for the executive committee only to vote on any of this, even if it was done as you just suggested. I know we have one person that can't meet Sunday and one that can't meet Monday. I would much rather prefer Monday to Sunday, as Sunday is also the day with my family,
Yeah, your
so.
family, yeah, yeah.
So Monday?
Mike?
No, it's nothing about the time. You go ahead and do that first.
Okay, all right. Well, with your concurrence, is Monday all right?
Absolutely.
I would really like to have had your participation.
I can provide comments
Right.
in advance.
Please do.
Agreed.
Please do. Okay, so then.
6 o'clock Monday?
6 o'clock Monday.
NPR, is it open?
I don't
She'll
know.
find
We'll
out.
find you a room, send it out.
Yeah.
Then I do have one question. As much as right now we have 3 candidates,
Oh, candidates for.
Yeah, candidates,
professional
service
search.
providers, yes.
excuse me.
No, that's all right, that was,
Do we know if they are available to start like 10 minutes after we decide that we need them?
They would be.
Leslie, what do you think? If we picked one of these folks, would they be willing and able to jump in as soon as we picked them on Monday?
It'll probably be a couple of days.
All right, so, but we know that all 3 are available
Yes,
as quickly as possible.
yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
All three what?
All 3 of those service
Companies.
providers that Leslie just read through.
Oh, okay. Whenever you say available. they're gonna show up.
Available to start working on this project.
Oh, okay.
That's, yeah, to get the ball rolling.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to complicate your life.
Please do.
So we just agreed to all the measures for the ballot and stuff. Lisa and I are going to get together tomorrow and hammer it out so that we can send it off to the printer. There's a thing called a printer's proof.
Yeah?
It has to be looked at, reviewed, and everything
When is
else.
that coming in?
Well, will we have it by Monday?
I don't know.
I'm kind of looking at Lisa. I don't know how soon AMS could get us something back.
Proof, it depends, I mean, we're meeting in the morning.
Yep.
So we should be able to knock this out and get it to them, and they've been able to get proof same day, but I can ask if they can.
Will you ask them early in the morning? I'll see you at 11 and we need to put this baby to bed because it's not going to get mailed out if it doesn't get printed. Because we also need the ballots to be looked at.
No, understood. We've got a lot of work. That comes with the territory. We have a lot of work.
2 items on the agenda for Monday then.
Perhaps. We'll keep it open.
Thank you. Put me on there tentatively.
Okay, so we don't know where exactly, but it'll either be here in the barn or here downstairs in MPR.
Okay.
Okay. Monday at 6 PM, special board.
We still have property owner comment.
Excuse me?
Oh, I thought everyone was leaving.
Staff is
Just staff.
getting ready to get out of here because they don't need to stay.
Okay.
I apologize, I gotta head out.
You gotta
Thank
head
you.
out. Ta-ta.
Thank you, Jennifer. She has a long commute.
Okie dokie.
Not as long as yours.
So is there anything else we need to discuss regarding the GM search this evening?
Sure, don't dawdle.
Yeah, don't dawdle, absolutely.
I have something I have to take care of. I have to leave.
But real quick, before you leave, I know you have to leave, but real quick, give us a quick update.
Today,
And introduce yourself.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
please.
And go up to the microphone. Hurry. Chop, 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 chop.
Your fire commissioners.
The famous.
We were going through the same process, and sorry to see you eventually. I encourage you to get started in the process right away. We culminated ours today with a conditional offer of employment for the new chief. Chief Ralston is going to be retiring.
Oh, I'm so sad.
And we'll probably, I know discussions have began as far as organizing something. He's been a resident of the community out here for more decades than I want to count. And it would be nice if you guys were a part of that process.
We would love it.
What's his date of retirement?
I believe his last day is May 31st.
Oh, next year.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
And that's what you guys were talking about. We have gone through quite a process in
Yeah.
And it's gone off in different directions, and
Yeah.
again, hiring the firms, and you guys, not much time.
Not much time.
Yeah, and I wish you luck, and I have sat basically in your seats and the same type of thing when we were selecting who the new chief's gonna be. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we're starting to see a lot of the numbers now. We moved our full-time crews from Geneva out here to Sutton Valley at the beginning of the year, and it's resulted in department-wide reduction in response times.
That's wonderful.
Great to hear.
Remarkable.
Thank you.
Decreases in the response times around here. So, call 911, we're getting the guys to you as quick as we can. What you do?
Cool.
That's it.
Thank you.
Oh.
Good night. See you, Mitch. Thanks for staying. Okey-doke. Member comments?
Cheryl Taylor, 6 Caddy Lane. I'll make this brief because I know everybody wants to go home. In response to your suggestion to do a brochure to talk about or illuminate some of the achievements and things that are going on here, I would strongly recommend that you use the bylaw sanction views to get that information out. We are already spending $6,000 or so a month on that publication. That is the sanctioned communication to get information out to the membership. And at a time when you're looking at spending a lot of extra money for the search group and you're struggling to find funds for other things, I just think it's an expense that maybe we could avoid at this time and use the views a little bit more completely. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other homeowner comments? Okay. Anything from the board?
Thank you. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so we're
10:13.
10:13.
They must have been okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for sticking around.
Thankfully, you're